I woke up with my wrists bound to a metal rail and the taste of copper in my mouth. I had no idea where I was or how I had gotten there. The air smelled of industrial bleach and stale urine. A woman in scrubs stood over me holding a syringe and told me to shut up. I am Desmond Floyd. I am 69 years old. I am a retired fraud investigator, and I am perfectly sane. Or at least I was until 3 days ago. That was before my only son drugged my wine. That was before he forged my signature on a power of attorney document. That was before he sold my $900,000 house to his fiancee for pennies on the dollar and dumped me in a state facility to rot. They thought they had buried me alive. They thought I was just another helpless old man who would fade away into the system. They were wrong. I spent 30 years hunting down con artists and liars. I know how to find the truth buried under the paperwork, and I know exactly how to turn a predator into prey. Before I tell you how I escaped and turned their greed into their worst nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight for your dignity against the people you loved the most. The first sensation was the throbbing inside my skull. It felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my temples. I tried to reach up to rub my forehead, but my hand stopped short. There was a sharp clinking sound. Leather straps dug into my wrists. I blinked my eyes open, but the room was spinning. It was a white room, but not the clean white of a hospital. It was a dingy yellowing white, like old teeth. The ceiling tiles were water-stained. I tried to sit up, but the restraints held me flat against the thin mattress. Panic is a cold thing. It started in my stomach and shot straight to my heart. I pulled against the straps. I shouted for help. My voice sounded raspy, like I had been screaming for hours in my sleep. The door banged open. A woman walked in. She was big. She filled the door frame. Her name tag said Brenda, but her eyes said she did not care if I lived or died. She looked at me with the bored expression of someone watching a fly buzz against a window. "You are awake," she said flatly. "You need to calm down, Mr. Floyd. You are having another episode." Episode. The word hung in the air. I am not having an episode. I am Desmond Floyd. I live at 4200 Peachtree Drive. Unbind me, I demanded. My voice was firm, or at least I tried to make it firm. I am not a patient. Brenda did not even blink. She walked to the side of the bed and picked up a syringe from a metal tray. "That is exactly what a confused person would say," she muttered. "The doctor said you would be combative. Agitation is part of the condition." She uncapped the needle. I saw the clear liquid inside. I knew what that was. I had seen it used in cases where nursing homes wanted to keep the residents quiet to save on staffing costs. It was a chemical gag. "Do not touch me," I growled. I kicked out with my legs, but they were strapped down too. I thrashed against the bed. "I am warning you. This is kidnapping. I will have your license. I will sue this entire facility." Brenda just sighed. She leaned her weight against my shoulder, pinning me down with a forearm that felt like a steel bar. "Save your breath, Pops. The more you fight, the more it proves you need the medicine. Just relax and let it happen." I felt the sting of the needle in my arm. I tried to bite her, but she was too fast. She pushed the plunger down. The cold liquid burned as it entered my vein. I fought it. I tried to keep my eyes open. I tried to recite the Bill of Rights in my head to keep my mind working. But the room started to tilt. The water stain on the ceiling looked like a face laughing at me. Brenda checked the straps one last time. "Nice and tight," she said. "Go back to sleep, Mr. Floyd. Maybe when you wake up you will remember that you belong here." She turned off the lights and walked out, leaving me in the darkness. As the drug pulled me under, I had one clear thought. This was not a mistake. This was a hit. I lost time. It could have been hours. It might have been a whole day. When I woke up again, the headache was a dull roar in the back of my neck. The straps were gone, but I was too weak to move. I was sitting in a wheelchair by a window with bars on it. I looked out. We were not in the city. I saw pine trees and a cracked parking lot. I saw a sign near the road that was half covered by overgrown kudzu vines. Shady Pines Care Center. My blood ran cold. I knew this place. Back when I was investigating insurance fraud for the state, Shady Pines was notorious. It was the bottom of the barrel. It was where families dumped relatives they did not want to pay for. It was a place where files went missing and patients died of bed sores. I was not in a hospital. I was in a warehouse for the unwanted. A man in a blue orderly uniform came in with a tray of gray food. He put it on the table. "Eat up, Des," he said cheerfully. I looked at him. His name tag said Marcus. "Marcus, listen to me. I need to use a phone. I need to call my lawyer. There has been a mistake." Marcus chuckled as he opened a carton of milk. "Yeah, I know. Everyone says that. The guy in room 104 thinks he is the mayor of Atlanta. Just eat your peas." "I am not crazy," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "I am a retired investigator. My son brought me here against my will. I have rights. I have a pension. I have a house." Marcus stopped smiling. He leaned in close. "Look, old-timer, your son brought you here because you attacked him. You do not remember? You tried to stab him with a steak knife. He signed the emergency committal papers 3 days ago. The doctor signed off on it. You are a danger to yourself and others. That is what the chart says. So stop with the lawyer talk and eat." I stared at the gray mash on the plate. Attacked him. Stabbed him. The lies were so specific. They had built a narrative. They had created a paper trail. If I argued, I was just being defensive. If I got angry, I was being aggressive. If I went silent, I was being catatonic. It was the perfect trap. I looked at Marcus. He did not see a man. He saw a diagnosis. He saw a paycheck. I realized then that talking to the staff was useless. They were part of the machine. I had to think. I had to remember. I pushed the food away. My mind was still foggy from the sedative, but I forced myself to focus. I closed my eyes and went back, not to the white room, not to the struggle, but to the night before, the night of my birthday. It was Tuesday. I was at my house, my beautiful house in the Cascade Heights neighborhood. I had bought it with my late wife Etta 30 years ago. It was paid off. It was my sanctuary. Terrence had come over for dinner. He brought Courtney, his fiancée. I never trusted Courtney. She was a real estate agent with a smile that showed too many teeth and eyes that calculated the square footage of a room before she even said hello. But Terrence seemed happy, so I tried to be nice. They brought steaks, they brought a cake, and they brought wine, a bottle of expensive French red, or at least the label looked expensive. "Happy birthday, Dad," Terrence said. He was sweating. I remembered that now. He was sweating even though the AC was on. He poured the wine. His hand was shaking. Courtney was calm. She was sitting at the head of the table where Etta used to sit. That bothered me, but I did not say anything. "Drink up, Desmond," she said. "It is a special vintage. We picked it out just for you." I lifted the glass. I smelled it. It had a heavy oaky nose. I took a sip. It was bitter. Not dry bitter, but chemical bitter. I frowned. "This tastes a little off, son," I said. Terrence looked at Courtney. She did not blink. "It just needs to breathe," she said. "Drink it. It cost a fortune." I did not want to be rude. I took a big swallow. That was my mistake. The reaction was almost instant. My tongue felt thick. The room started to telescope. The edges of my vision went black. I tried to stand up. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table. "Something is wrong," I slurred. "Call 911. I looked at Terrence. He was still sitting there. He was gripping his fork so hard his knuckles were white. He did not reach for his phone. He did not stand up to help me. He just watched. "Dad, sit down," he whispered. "Just sit down." Courtney stood up. She walked over to me. She did not help me. She put a hand on my shoulder and pushed. I had no strength. I collapsed back into the chair and then slid onto the floor. The rug smelled of lemon polish. I looked up. I saw them towering over me. "Is he out?" Terrence asked. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Not yet," Courtney said. She kicked my leg gently with her heel. "Give it a minute." The dosage was high enough to knock out a horse. My own son. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The man I bailed out of debt 3 times. He stood there and watched me fade. I tried to speak. I tried to say his name, but my mouth would not work. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me completely was Courtney reaching into my jacket pocket. She pulled out my wallet. She pulled out my keys. "Got them," she said. She smiled down at me. "Happy birthday, Des. Don't worry about the house. We will take good care of the equity." Then the lights went out. I opened my eyes in the nursing home. The memory was sharp now. It cut through the fog of the drugs. They had poisoned me. They had kidnapped me. And they had done it for the house. My house. $900,000 of equity sitting in the Atlanta market. Terrence was broke. I knew he was dabbling in crypto and losing bad. Courtney was a shark who smelled blood. They needed cash, and I was the obstacle. I looked at my hands. They were trembling, not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like it could melt the bars on the window. They thought the game was over. They thought they had won, but they made a mistake. They left me alive, and they forgot who I am. I am not just a father. I am an investigator, and I was about to start the most important case of my life. I looked at the door. I knew Brenda would be back soon with another needle. I needed a plan. I needed to get my head clear. I grabbed the tray of food. I forced myself to eat the cold mash. I needed calories. I needed strength. I ate every bite while plotting their destruction. 3 days. I had been here 3 days. That meant they had a head start. They had my keys. They had my ID. They had the run of my house. But they did not know about the failsafe I had built into my estate planning. And they definitely did not know that I was done playing the victim. The door opened again. It was not Brenda. It was Terrence. He walked in wearing a suit I had bought him for church. He looked clean. He looked sad. He looked like the perfect grieving son visiting his sick father. Courtney was right behind him, holding a bouquet of cheap flowers. "Dad," Terrence said, his voice thick with fake concern. "Oh, thank God you are awake. We were so worried." I sat very still. I let my face go slack. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I decided right then and there to give them exactly what they wanted. If they wanted a senile old man, I would give them a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Who are you?" I asked, making my voice tremble. "Where is Etta? Where is my wife?" Courtney smiled. It was a predator's smile. "See, babe," she whispered to Terrence, "he is completely gone. The house is ours." I watched them. I memorized their faces, and deep inside my mind where they could not see, I began to sharpen my knives. The war had just begun. The nurse lingered by the door for a moment, watching us. I kept my eyes wide and vacant, staring past Terrence's shoulder at the peeling paint on the wall. My hands rested limp in my lap, but every muscle in my body was coiled tight. I was an investigator for 30 years, and I know when a suspect is performing. Terrence was performing. He patted my hand with a touch that felt like ice. I pulled away slightly, playing the part of the confused geriatric. "Where is Etta?" I asked again, my voice cracking. "Why did she not come? She hates hospitals." Terrence sighed. It was a long, exaggerated sound meant for the nurse's benefit. "Dad, Etta has been gone for 5 years. You know that." His voice dripped with a sickening kind of patience. The nurse nodded approvingly at him, clearly thinking he was a saint for dealing with me. Then she finally stepped out and closed the door. The moment the latch clicked, the air in the room changed. It went from fake sympathy to cold hostility in a heartbeat. Courtney dropped my hand immediately and wiped her palm on her dress as if I were contagious. She walked over to the window and crossed her arms. "You need to stop asking about your dead wife, Desmond. It makes you look pathetic." Terrence loosened his tie and sat in the plastic chair next to the bed. He looked tired, but not from grief. It was the fatigue of a man trying to keep too many lies spinning in the air at once. "Listen, Dad. We need to talk about what happened the other night. The doctor says your memory is going to be spotty because of the Alzheimer's episode, but you need to know the truth." I looked at him blankly while my mind raced. Alzheimer's. That was the angle. They were building a medical history out of thin air. "What happened?" I whispered. "Did I fall?" "No, Dad, you didn't fall," Terrence said, leaning in. "You attacked me. We were having a nice dinner for your birthday and you just snapped. You started screaming about people stealing your money. You grabbed a steak knife. You tried to cut me. Look." He pulled up his sleeve to show a faint scratch on his forearm. It looked like a cat scratch or something he had done to himself with a paperclip. I stared at the scratch. It was pathetic. If I had actually attacked him with a knife, he would be in the morgue, not sitting here lying to my face. I realized then how much he resented me. He was painting me as a violent monster to justify locking me away. It was gaslighting in its purest form. He wanted me to doubt my own reality. He wanted me to believe that the poison in my wine was actually a psychotic break in my brain. I do not remember that I said, keeping my voice shaky, "I would never hurt you, son." Courtney scoffed from the window. "That is the disease talking, Desmond. You are not the man you used to be. You are dangerous. That is why we had to bring you here, for your own safety and ours. We could not have you running around that big house with knives, could we?" The mention of the house made my stomach turn. I knew we were getting to the real reason for this visit. I decided to push just a little to see how far they would go. "I want to go home," I said. "I promise I will be good. Take me back to Peachtree Drive. I just want to sit on my porch." Terrence looked at Courtney. She gave him a sharp nod. It was a signal, the executioner giving the order. Terrence turned back to me and his face hardened. He was not the boy I raised anymore. He was a stranger with my last name. "We need to talk about the house, Dad." The silence that followed that sentence was heavy and suffocating. I gripped the sheets. I knew what was coming, but hearing it was going to be a different kind of pain. "What about the house?" I asked. "You can't go back there, Desmond," Courtney said, stepping forward. She took over the conversation because Terrence was too weak to deliver the killing blow. "You require 24-hour care now. This facility is your home. It costs $6,000 a month to keep you here in the memory care unit." I did the math in my head instantly. $6,000 was steep for this dump, but it was not impossible. My pension covered $4,000. My savings could cover the rest for years. I did not need to sell anything. But I knew logic did not matter here. "So I will pay it," I said. "I have money. Just let me go home. I can hire a nurse." "No, Dad," Terrence interrupted. "You don't understand. The money is tied up. And the medical bills from the ambulance and the emergency intake were astronomical. We had to make a decision, an executive decision." My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt a cold sweat breaking out on my neck. "What did you do, Terrence?" "We sold it," he said. The words rushed out of his mouth like vomit. "We sold the house, Dad. It is gone. We closed yesterday." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My vision blurred for a second, and I did not have to pretend to be shocked. That house was everything. I bought it with Etta 30 years ago. Every nail in the deck I hammered myself. The rose garden in the back was Etta's pride and joy. I still watered those roses every morning at 6 a.m. just to feel close to her. My office was there with all my case files, my history, my life. And in 3 days, while I was drugged and tied to a bed, they had stripped it from me. "You sold it," I whispered. "My home." "It was for the best," Courtney said, her voice devoid of any real empathy. "It was too much house for one old man. It was falling apart anyway. We did you a favor. Now you don't have to worry about the roof or the taxes. You can just relax here and let the professionals take care of you." They had not just sold a building. They had sold my sanctuary. They had evicted me from my own life. I looked at Terrence. He was looking at his shoes, unable to meet my eyes. He knew. Deep down, he knew he was committing a sin that could not be washed away. He had traded his father's legacy for a quick payday. I took a deep breath. I had to stay in character. If I exploded now, if I showed them the rage that was boiling in my blood, they would just sedate me again. I had to be the broken old man. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Etta's pictures, my books." "We put the important stuff in storage," Terrence mumbled. "The rest, we let the estate liquidators handle it. It was mostly junk, Dad. Old papers. Nothing valuable. Junk. My life was junk to them." I closed my eyes to hide the fire burning in them. They had erased me. In 72 hours, they had wiped Desmond Floyd off the map. I was just a number in a bed now, a problem they had solved. But there was one detail left, one detail that would tell me exactly how deep this conspiracy went. I opened my eyes and looked at Courtney. She was checking her watch, bored. She wanted to leave. She wanted to go spend the money. "How much?" I asked. "What does it matter?" Courtney sighed. "It is going into your care fund." "How much?" I repeated louder this time, letting a little bit of my old authority slip through. Terrence flinched. $650,000, he said quickly. "We got a cash offer, fast closing, no inspections." $650,000. The number echoed in my head. I knew the Atlanta market. I knew my neighborhood. The house next door, which was smaller and had no upgrades, sold last month for $880,000. My house with the finished basement and the quarter-acre lot was easily worth $900,000, maybe $950,000 in a bidding war. They had sold it for $250,000 under market value. That was not a sale. That was a giveaway. I looked at Courtney. Her eyes were gleaming. She was a real estate agent. She knew the comps. She knew the value. No agent in their right mind would let a property go for that price, unless the buyer was someone they wanted to help, or unless the buyer was them. Who bought it? I asked. My voice was low, dangerous. A private investor, Courtney said too quickly. An LLC, Future Bright Holdings. They are very reputable. They specialize in distressed properties. Distressed? My house was pristine. I just painted the exterior last summer. That is a low price, I said. That is very low. It was a fair market value for a quick sale, Terrence insisted, parroting words Courtney had probably fed him. We needed the cash now, Dad, for your care. We couldn't wait months for a traditional buyer. I looked at Courtney's hand. She was smoothing her hair. On her finger sat a new ring, a diamond. It was big, flashy, the kind of ring you buy when you suddenly come into a lot of money, or when you are celebrating a big win. I put the pieces together in seconds. Future Bright Holdings. I would bet my pension that if I pulled the corporate filings, Courtney's name or the name of one of her associates would be on the paperwork. She did not just sell my house. She bought it from herself using my equity to finance the deal and probably flipped it to a hard money lender to cash out. It was mortgage fraud. It was elder abuse. It was grand larceny. And Terrence, my son, was standing there letting it happen. He was either too stupid to see he was being played, or he was so desperate for cash he did not care. I slumped back into the pillows, letting my mouth hang open a little, returning to the role of the defeated invalid. I am tired, I muttered. I want to sleep. Courtney smiled. It was a predator's smile, sharp and satisfied. Good idea, Desmond. You get some rest. We will handle everything. Do not worry about a thing. We are going to go now, Dad, Terrence said. He stood up looking relieved. I will visit you next week. Maybe bring you some of those cookies you like. Cookies. He stole my life, and he was offering me cookies. They walked to the door. Courtney stopped and looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were cold, dead things. Enjoy your stay, she said. The door clicked shut. I waited 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then I sat up. The shaking in my hands stopped. The confusion vanished. I was not Desmond Floyd, the dementia patient, anymore. I was Des Floyd, the man who brought down the Golden Circle scam in '98. $650,000. They stole $250,000 in equity and locked me in a cage. I looked out the window at the gray sky. They thought they had won. They thought I was finished, but they made a critical error. They gave me a target. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. My muscles were stiff, but they worked. I walked to the door and listened. I could hear the squeak of nurse shoes and the distant hum of a television. I needed a phone. I needed a computer, and I needed to make a call to the one person in this city who hated corrupt real estate agents more than I did. My son had declared war on me. He wanted my house. He wanted my money. He wanted me dead and buried in this hole. I walked back to the bed and sat down. I smoothed the sheets. I looked at the spot where Terrence had sat. I am going to get my house back, I whispered to the empty room. And then I am going to take everything you have, every dime, every dream, every lie. I lay back down and closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I started planning. Phase 1 was complete. I knew the enemy. I knew the crime. Now it was time for Phase 2. I needed an ally on the inside, and I knew exactly who to target. They moved me to the isolation ward an hour after my son left. Apparently asking too many questions about your own assets counts as aggressive behavior in Shady Pines. 2 orderlies dragged me down a hallway that smelled of mildew and despair, and threw me into a room that was barely larger than a walk-in closet. There were no windows, just a heavy steel door with a small, reinforced glass observation port, and a mattress on the floor. No bed frame, no chair, nothing I could break or turn into a weapon. They wanted to break me. I knew the drill. Isolation is designed to dismantle the human mind. It strips away your sense of time and your sense of self, until you are willing to do anything just to hear a human voice. But they forgot that I spent 20 years interviewing con men in interrogation rooms. I know how to wait. I sat on the mattress and crossed my legs. I closed my eyes and began to build a palace in my mind. I reconstructed my case files from memory. I walked through the floor plans of every house I had ever investigated. I replayed innings of the '95 World Series. I kept my mind moving so it would not rot. When the nurse came with the little paper cup of pills, I refused to open my mouth. She tried to force it, but I clenched my jaw until my teeth creaked. I am not taking your poison, I said through gritted teeth. She sighed and left the cup on the floor. Suit yourself, Pops, she said. You will get hungry eventually. I was hungry. My stomach was a knot of cramping muscle. But I knew that hunger was clarity. Food in this place was likely laced with sedatives to keep the population docile. If I wanted to think, I had to starve. So I pushed the tray away when it came. Instead, I stood up. I paced the length of the cell. 3 steps, turn. 3 steps, turn. I did push-ups until my arms shook. I did sit-ups until my core burned. I forced the blood to pump through my veins, flushing out the remnants of the drugs they had given me days ago. I was 69 years old, but I was not frail. I had kept myself in shape since Etta died, because the gym was the only place where the silence of the house didn't deafen me. Now that discipline was my only weapon, I counted the seconds. I counted the heartbeats. I waited for the shift change. I waited for the one weakness in their armor. Her name was Brenda. She was the night shift head nurse, the one who had sedated me my first day. She was big, tough, and projected an aura of absolute authority. But I had been watching her through the observation port. I watched her when she thought no one was looking. I watched her hands. It was subtle. A slight hesitation at the medication cart. A quick glance over her shoulder before she unlocked the narcotic cabinet. A movement of her hand to her pocket instead of the tray. She was skimming. Oxycodone, probably. Maybe Percocet. High street value. Easy to move. And in a place like this, where half the patients were too medicated to complain about missed doses, it was the perfect crime. Almost perfect. On the 3rd night of my isolation, she opened the door to check on me. She looked tired. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She held a clipboard in one hand and a flashlight in the other. "Still alive in here, Floyd?" she asked, shining the beam in my face. I stood up. I smoothed my hospital gown. I looked her dead in the eye. I stepped into the light. "You are short on the count," I said. Brenda froze. The flashlight beam wavered. "What did you say?" "Tuesday night, you took 3 pills from the 3rd drawer down. Wednesday night, you took 2. Tonight, you took 4. You are logging them as administered to patients in the dementia wing, but you are pocketing them." She took a step back, her hand going to the panic button on her belt. "You are crazy, old man. That is the isolation talking. Do not press that button, Brenda," I said, my voice low and steady. "If you call security, I will start screaming. I will scream exactly what I saw. I will demand a count of the narcotics cabinet right now. I will demand a urine test for you. Do you think the administrator will risk a state audit to save you?" Her hand hovered over the button. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was not scared of me physically. She was scared of losing her job. She was scared of jail. "What do you want?" she hissed, stepping into the room and letting the heavy door click shut behind her. "I do not want to report you," I said. "I do not care what you do with the pills. This place is a sewer, and you are just trying to survive. I respect that." She narrowed her eyes. "You are a cop." "I was an investigator," I corrected. "Insurance fraud. I know how to cook books, Brenda. I know how to hide inventory loss so that even a forensic accountant would have trouble finding it. You are doing it sloppy. You are just fudging the numbers. Eventually the variance will get flagged." She lowered the flashlight. The hostility in her face was replaced by a wary curiosity. "So you are going to teach me how to steal better?" "I am going to teach you how not to get caught," I said, "but I have a price." She laughed a dry, humorless sound. "You want money. I do not have money. I do not want money. I want 10 minutes. 10 minutes for what?" I pointed to the bulge in her scrub pocket. "Your phone. I need 10 minutes with an internet connection. No calls, just data. You stand right here and watch me. I just need to check something." Brenda stared at me for a long time. She looked at the door, then back at me. She weighed the risk. Giving a patient a phone was a firing offense, but getting caught stealing narcotics was a felony. 10 minutes, she said. "If you try to make a call, I break your fingers." "Deal." She pulled out a cracked smartphone and unlocked it. She handed it to me, but kept her hand close, ready to snatch it back. I took it. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but from adrenaline. I had 10 minutes to find out who destroyed my life. I opened the browser. I went straight to the county property records site. My fingers flew across the small keyboard. I typed in my address, 4200 Peachtree Drive. The page loaded slowly. The signal in the isolation ward was weak. I held my breath. The record popped up. Sold. Date, October 14th. Price, $650,000. I scrolled down to the buyer information. It was an LLC just like Courtney said. Future Bright Holdings. I opened a new tab. I went to the Secretary of State's business search. I typed in Future Bright Holdings. I needed to know who was behind the mask. The screen refreshed. The registered agent information appeared. My heart stopped. It was not a random investor. It was not a faceless corporation. Registered agent, Courtney Miller. Principal address, a P.O. box in downtown Atlanta. I stared at the name, Courtney Miller. My son's fiancée. The woman who sat at my table and drank my wine. She did not just sell my house, she bought it. She bought my $900,000 home for $650,000, using my own equity to finance the deal. It was a flip scam. She buys it cheap from the distressed seller, basically stealing the equity. Then she turns around and refinances it at full value, pulling out hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Or she sells it for market price and pockets the difference. And Terrence knew. He had to know. He signed the deed. He let her do it. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It was the death of hope. The death of the father I used to be. My son did not just betray me for money. He betrayed me for her. He let this woman strip mine his father's life so they could have a payday. Time is up, Brenda said, snatching the phone from my hand. I stood there, staring at the blank space where the screen had been. My hands were clenched into fists so tight, my nails dug into my palms. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Brenda asked, watching my face. "Yes," I whispered. "I found it." She looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of something like pity in her hard eyes. "You look like you just saw a ghost." "I did not see a ghost, Brenda," I said, my voice changing, hardening, becoming something jagged and dangerous. "I saw a target." I looked at her. "I need one more thing." She scoffed. "You are pushing your luck, old man. You got your 10 minutes. Now tell me how to fix the inventory count." "I will tell you exactly how to adjust the digital logs so the timestamps match the shift changes," I said. "But I need you to do something for me. I need you to get a message out." "To who?" "To a lawyer," I said. "Her name is Elena Rodriguez. She is the meanest shark in Atlanta, and she owes me a favor." Brenda shook her head. "No way. No messages. That leaves a trail." "Not if you do it right," I said. I looked at her with the intensity that used to make fraudsters sweat in their expensive suits. "Listen to me, Brenda. The people who put me here stole almost $1 million from me. They think I am helpless. They think I am done. But I am going to burn them down. And when I get out of here, I'm going to need a personal assistant. Someone who knows how to handle difficult situations. Someone who isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. It pays a lot better than this dump." Brenda paused. She looked at the peeling paint on the walls. She looked at the stains on her scrubs. She looked at the hopeless reality of her life. "How much better?" she asked. "Double," I said, "plus benefits, and no chance of prison." She bit her lip. "Write the number down," she said, "but if this blows back on me, I will inject you with enough Haldol to stop an elephant." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who just found the scent of blood. "Deal." She handed me a pen. I wrote Elena's number on the back of a medication wrapper. "Call her," I said. "Tell her Des Floyd is in the box. Tell her the code word is Jericho. She will know what to do." Brenda took the paper and tucked it into her bra. "You better be worth it, Floyd." "I am not just worth it, Brenda," I said, sitting back down on the mattress and crossing my legs. "I am the winning lottery ticket. You just have to keep me alive long enough to cash it." She left, locking the heavy door behind her. I was back in the dark. I was back in the silence. But I was not alone anymore. I had the truth. I had a name. Courtney Miller. I closed my eyes and pictured her face. I pictured her signing the papers. I pictured her laughing with my son. "Laugh while you can, Courtney," I whispered to the darkness, "because I am coming, and I am bringing hell with me." The phone felt alien in my hand. It was a cheap prepaid burner with a cracked screen that Brenda had dug out of her locker. But to me, it felt like the nuclear launch codes. My thumb hovered over the keypad. I knew the number by heart. I had dialed it 1,000 times during my years as an investigator. usually when I needed someone to bury a fraudulent insurance claim with paperwork so heavy it would crush the scammer flat. Elena Rodriguez, the Iron Lady of Atlanta civil litigation. She was the only person in this city who terrified me, and she was the only one who could save me. Brenda stood by the heavy steel door, watching the hallway through the observation port. Her body was tense. She knew that if I got caught making this call, we were both finished. I took a breath that tasted of stale air and dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I looked at the digital clock on the screen. It was 2 in the morning. Elena would be asleep or working. With her, it was 50-50. Finally, the line clicked open. A voice, sharp as a razor blade, cut through the static. "Who is this?" It was not a question. It was a demand. Elena did not do polite greetings at 2 a.m. "Jericho," I whispered. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence that stretched for 5 seconds. Jericho was a case we worked 10 years ago, a massive arson fraud involving a warehouse district and 3 corrupt city councilmen. It was the case that made her career and almost ended mine. It was the code word we agreed on for a situation that was completely and totally sideways. Des. Elena's voice changed instantly. It lost the edge of annoyance and gained a note of razor-sharp focus. "You have been off the grid for 4 days. Your son filed a missing persons report and then canceled it 6 hours later, claiming you were found safe at a private retreat. I called your house. A woman answered. She said you were unavailable. Where are you?" "I am not at a retreat, Elena," I said, keeping my voice low and urgent. "I am in a box. It is a place called Shady Pines. It is a dumping ground for the indigent and the unwanted. My son put me here. Shady Pines." I could hear the sound of her typing furiously on a keyboard in the background. "That is a state-subsidized facility, Des. You do not qualify for that. You have assets. You have a pension. Why are you there?" "Because I do not have assets anymore, Elena. They sold the house." The typing stopped. "Explain." I gave her the short version. The dinner, the wine, the bitter taste, waking up tied to a bed, the visit from Terrence and Courtney, the LLC called Future Bright Holdings, the sale price that was robbery in broad daylight. I gave her the facts, cold and hard, just like I would in a deposition. I did not cry. I did not beg. I just gave her the ammunition. When I finished, the silence on the line was different. It was the silence of a predator spotting prey. "Courtney Miller," Elena said, saying the name like it was a curse word. "I know her. She is a small-time hustler in the real estate game. She flips foreclosures. If she is the registered agent for the LLC that bought your house, then this is not just elder abuse, Des. This is conspiracy. This is mortgage fraud. This is racketeering. Can you get me out?" I asked. I expected her to say yes immediately. I expected her to say she would kick down the doors with a squadron of police officers, but she did not say that. Instead, she let out a slow, frustrated breath. "Des, listen to me very carefully. I am looking at the county probate court records right now. I have a back door into the system. There was an emergency filing 3 days ago, an ex-parte hearing. My stomach dropped. Ex-parte meant one-sided. It meant they went to a judge without me present. What did they file? Emergency temporary guardianship, Elena said. Her voice was grim. They have a medical affidavit signed by a Dr. Vornoff. It states that you suffered a psychotic break, that you were violent, that you have advanced dementia with paranoid delusions. The judge granted temporary control of your person and your estate to Terrence Floyd, pending a full hearing in 30 days. Vornoff. I memorized the name. I would find him later. So fight it, I said. You are the best lawyer in the state. File a motion. Get a new evaluation. Get me out of here. I can file a writ of habeas corpus in the morning, Elena said. I can demand you be produced before a judge. But Des, you have to understand the game they are playing. If I file that motion, Terrence gets notified immediately. He has legal custody of you right now. If he sees that you have lawyered up, if he sees that you are fighting back, he will not bring you to court. What will he do? He will move you, Elena said. He has the legal right to transfer you to a more secure facility for your own safety. He could move you to a locked memory unit in Alabama or Mississippi. He could put you in a place where I cannot reach you, where the phones do not work and the staff are paid to look the other way. If I trigger the alarm now, you might disappear into the system for 6 months before I can get a judge to sign the right order. And by then, the house will be flipped, the money will be laundered, and you will actually be crazy from the drugs they pump into you. I leaned my head against the cold concrete wall. She was right. I knew the system. I had seen it happen to victims of insurance scams. Once you are in the machinery, it is incredibly hard to get out, especially when your legal guardian is the one keeping you there. I was trapped. The law which I had served for 30 years was now the cage holding me in. So, what do we do? I asked. Do I just rot here? No, Elena said. We wait. We need to catch them in an act that breaks the guardianship. Right now, they have legal cover. Sell the house to pay for your care is technically legal, even if the price was rigged. We need them to do something that is undeniably theft, something that has nothing to do with your care. I closed my eyes and thought. I thought about Terrence. I thought about his greed. He was desperate. He was broke. He wouldn't be able to wait for the house money to clear escrow. He needed cash now. The first of the month, I whispered. What happens on the first? Elena asked. My pension drops, I said. It is a direct deposit, $4,000, plus my Social Security. It goes into my main checking account. Okay, Elena said, following my train of thought. So what? As your guardian, he has access to that account to pay your bills. Yes, I said, but he does not know that I have a secondary alert set up on that account. Years ago, after Etta died, I set up a dormant transfer rule. Any withdrawal over $500 that is not a utility bill triggers a flag to my private email. But more importantly, that account is designated for living expenses only. If he moves that money to a personal account or uses it to pay his own debts, that is piercing the fiduciary veil. That is embezzlement. It is a start, Elena said, but it is not enough. $4,000 is petty theft. We need a felony. We need something that puts him away for 10 years, not 6 months. I looked at Brenda. She was checking her watch. I had 2 minutes left. I have a safe, I said, in the house, in the floor of the master closet, under the carpet. Terrence knows it is there, but he does not have the combination. He thinks it is empty, but it is not. What is in it? Gold, I said. Krugerrands, about $50,000 worth. I bought them years ago as a hedge against inflation. If he finds that safe, he will try to crack it. He won't be able to resist. And if he takes that gold and sells it, that is not paying for my care. That is theft of physical assets. How do we make him open it? We don't, I said. I will tell him how to open it. Elena paused. You want to give him the gold. I want to give him the rope to hang himself, I said. Listen, Elena. Terrence is coming back in a few days to get me to sign some final papers for the house transfer. He thinks I am senile. He thinks I am broken. I am going to play the part. I am going to have a moment of clarity. I am going to tell him about the gold. I am going to tell him I want him to have it, to keep it safe from the bad men at the nursing home. And when he takes it, Elena said, her voice warming up with admiration, when he takes it, he will sell it at a pawn shop or a gold exchange, I said. He is lazy. He won't travel far. He will go to the place on 10th Street. I need you to have a private investigator watching him. I need photos of him walking in with the coins and walking out with cash. That is grand larceny, Elena said. That breaks the guardianship. If he converts assets for personal gain, I can get an emergency injunction to freeze everything and strip him of custody. Exactly, I said. But I need time. I need him to feel safe. I need him to think he has won. How much time, Des? 1 week, I said. The first of the month is in 7 days. He will loot the pension account, then he will come for the signature, and I will give him the gold. We catch him on both. 7 days in that hole? Elena said softly. Des, you are 69. They are drugging you. 7 days is a long time. If you crack, if you fight back, they will sedate you until you drool. I won't crack, I said. I will become a ghost. I will be the most docile, pathetic, confused old man they have ever seen. I will eat their slop. I will take their pills and cheek them. I will sit in my own filth if I have to. But I need you to be ready. On the 7th day, when I give the signal, you bring the cavalry. I will have the paperwork ready, Elena promised. I will have the police. I will have the medical board ready to revoke Vornoff's license. But Des, you have to stay alive. Do not let them provoke you. They can't provoke me, I said, feeling a cold calm settle over me. You can only provoke a man who has something to lose. I have already lost everything. Now I am just hunting. Brenda stepped away from the door. "Time is up, Floyd," she hissed. "Someone is coming." "I have to go," I told Elena. 1 week. The code word for the extraction is payday. "Payday," Elena repeated. "Stay sharp, Des. We are coming for you." I handed the phone back to Brenda just as the heavy footsteps of the night guard echoed in the corridor. She shoved the phone into her bra and smoothed her scrubs. Her face went back to the mask of boredom and indifference. "You got what you needed," she whispered. I nodded. "I got a war plan." Brenda looked at me. For the first time, she didn't look at me like a patient. She looked at me like a partner. "Good," she said. "Because if you go down, I go down. And I do not look good in orange." She opened the door and barked at me to sit down. I collapsed onto the mattress, making myself small, making myself look weak. The guard looked through the port, saw a broken old man staring at the wall, and kept walking. I lay down on the thin mattress. The room was cold. The smell was awful. But for the first time in 3 days, I smiled in the dark. 7 days, 168 hours. I could do this. I would endure the humiliation. I would endure the isolation. I would let them strip away my dignity piece by piece, because every indignity was a deposit in a bank account of rage that was about to pay out with interest. I closed my eyes and pictured Terrence. I pictured him finding the gold. I pictured his greed lighting up his face. He would think it was a windfall. He would think he had hit the jackpot. He would not see the trap until the steel jaws slammed shut around his leg. I slept that night. It was not a restful sleep, but it was the sleep of a soldier before the battle. When I woke up the next morning, I began my performance. I stopped doing push-ups. I stopped pacing. I started muttering to myself. I started asking for Etta. I started shuffling when I walked. When the nurses came, I trembled. When Marcus brought the food, I spilled it on myself and cried. They looked at me with disgust and pity. They wrote notes in my chart. Patient is deteriorating. Patient is confused. Patient is compliant. Excellent. Let them document my decline. Let them build the case for my incompetence. It would only make their fall more spectacular. 3 days passed, then 4. Brenda kept her distance, but every night she gave me a subtle nod. She was holding up her end. She was fixing the inventory logs. She was keeping the other staff off my back. On the 5th day, they moved me back to the general ward. I was no longer a flight risk. I was just a vegetable. They put me in a room with a man who screamed at invisible spiders all night. I sat by the window and watched the parking lot. I watched the cars come and go. I watched the world turn outside, and I waited for the devil to come back for his signature. He would come. Greed is a powerful magnet. He needed that final transfer of the deed to clear the title for the loan. He needed my fingerprint or my scrawl on the dotted line, and when he came, I would be ready. I would hand him the keys to his own destruction and thank him for taking them. The sacrifice of my freedom was a high price. Every hour in this place took a piece of my soul, but I knew the return on investment would be worth it. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to prove that you cannot throw a man away just because his hair is gray. I was fighting for every person in this building who didn't have an Elena Rodriguez on speed dial. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. I looked old. I looked tired. I looked beaten. "Good," I whispered. "That is exactly what they want to see. Let them come." The days blurred into a gray smear of routine. Meds, food, sleep, repeat. But under the surface of the comatose geriatric, I was sharpening my mind like a prison shiv. Brenda had come through. On Tuesday night, she slid a small black pen onto my dinner tray under a napkin. It was not a pen. It was a high-fidelity digital recorder sent by Elena. It had 12 hours of battery life, and a microphone sensitive enough to hear a pin drop in the next room. I hid it in the waistband of my pajama pants and waited. I knew they would come back. Greed is an itch that demands to be scratched, and they were in the final stretch. On Thursday morning, the door opened. It was Terrence. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, but it fit him poorly, like he was a boy playing dress-up in his father's clothes. He carried a leather portfolio and a distinct air of impatience. Courtney was with him. She looked radiant in a way that made my stomach turn. She was practically glowing with the anticipation of spending money she had not earned. I was sitting in the wheelchair by the window, staring at a dead bird on the pavement outside. I did not turn when they entered. I let a line of drool escape the corner of my mouth. I kept my hands shaking in a rhythmic tremor. "Hey, Dad," Terrence said, his voice loud and slow like he was talking to a toddler. "We are back. We brought you some papers. Just routine stuff for the facility." I slowly turned my head. I looked at him with eyes that I forced to be empty. I looked past him. I looked at his ear. I looked at the ceiling. "Who are you?" I croaked. "You look like my brother. Is that you, Marcus?" Terrence let out a breath he had been holding. He looked at Courtney and smirked. "He is totally gone. He thinks I am Uncle Marcus. Marcus died in '92. Courtney laughed. It was a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Well, that makes this easier. Just get him to make a mark or sign it yourself. The notary is waiting in the lobby, but we need the principal's signature line filled out first." Terrence sat down on the edge of the bed. He opened the portfolio. I saw the document. It was a quitclaim deed. It was the final nail in the coffin, transferring full ownership of the property to Future Bright Holdings. He needed one last signature to clear the title insurance. "Here, Marcus," I said, my voice trembling. "Did we go fishing?" "Yeah, we went fishing," Terrence said, distracted. He put the pen in my hand. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen. "Just sign here, Marcus, right on the line. Then we can go catch some bass." I held the pen. I let my hand hover over the paper. I made it shake violently. The ink bled onto the page, making a mess. "I cannot do it," I whined. "My hand hurts." "Jesus Christ," Courtney hissed. "Just do it for him, Terrence. He is incompetent. Your power of attorney covers this. Just sign his name and put POA next to it. No one is going to check the handwriting of a vegetable." Terrence hesitated. He looked at me. For a second I saw a flash of guilt. Just a spark. But then he looked at Courtney, and the spark died. He took the pen from my hand. "You are right," he said. He scribbled my name, Desmond Floyd. Then he signed his own name next to it. By doing that right in front of me while I was conscious, he was committing forgery and fraud. He was acting as an agent for a principal he knew was under duress. I watched him do it. I engraved the image into my memory, the way he held the pen, the way he bit his lip, the way he sold his soul for a signature. "Good job, Marcus," I mumbled. "You always were the smart one." Terrence closed the folder with a snap. "Done. The house is officially ours. Or, well, Future Bright's." Courtney clapped her hands together. "Finally. God, this took forever." She walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot, but I knew she was seeing my house. She was seeing her new kingdom. She turned back to me, and the look on her face was pure malice. She did not see a person. She saw a stepping stone she had successfully stepped on. "You know, Desmond," she said, leaning down so her face was inches from mine. Her perfume was expensive and cloying. "We are going to make some changes. Big changes." I blinked at her stupidly. "Changes?" I echoed. "Yeah," Courtney said. "That dusty old office of yours. The one with all those boring case files and that ugly oak desk. It is gone. I am bringing in a contractor on Monday. We are gutting it." I felt a spike of rage so hot it almost broke my cover. My office was my sanctuary. It held 30 years of my life. It held the first case I ever solved. It held the picture of Etta and me on our honeymoon. "Gutting it?" I whispered. "Down to the studs," she said, smiling. "It is going to be a home gym. Mirrors on every wall, Peloton in the corner, and that rose garden in the back, the one you spend hours watering. It is dirt now. We are putting in an infinity pool. It is going to be so modern. No more old man smell." She was goading me. She wanted a reaction. She wanted to see the pain in my eyes. It was cruel, and it was unnecessary. They had already won. Why twist the knife unless you enjoyed the blood? I forced myself to think of Etta. I forced myself to remember her voice telling me to be patient. "Be a rock. Des," she would say. "Let the river break around you." I looked at Courtney and let my eyes fill with tears. Real tears of rage that I disguised as senile confusion. "My roses," I blubbered. "Do not hurt the roses. Etta loves them." Courtney rolled her eyes. "Etta is dead, old man, and the roses are mulch. Get over it." Terrence stood up. "Come on, Court. That is enough. Let us not be mean. We got what we came for." Courtney straightened up, smoothing her dress. "I am not being mean. I am being honest. He does not understand anyway. Look at him. He is drooling." She looked at her hand. She flashed a ring at me. It was huge, a solitaire diamond that caught the fluorescent light of the hospital room. Besides, she said, looking at the ring, he paid for this. We should thank him. That was the opening. That was the moment. I shifted in the chair. I felt the hard plastic of the recorder pressing against my spine. I needed a confession. I needed them to say it out loud. I needed the smoking gun. I started to rock back and forth. The wine, I muttered. The wine was bad. It tasted like pennies. Terrence froze. He looked at me sharply. What did you say, Dad? I kept rocking. The birthday wine. It made me sleep. Why did it taste like pennies, Marcus? Was it bad grapes? Courtney laughed again, but this time there was a nervous edge to it. He remembers the wine. That is funny. Terrence looked at her. Do you think he knows? Knows what? Courtney scoffed. That we spiked his Merlot with enough benzodiazepines to tranquilize an elephant. He does not know anything. His brain is Swiss cheese. He just remembers a bad taste. Benzodiazepines. She said the word. She admitted the weapon. My heart was hammering so hard I was afraid the microphone would pick it up. I needed one more thing. I needed the motive tied to the action. Why I whined. Why did I have to sleep? Because you wouldn't sell the damn house, Desmond, Courtney snapped, losing her patience. Because you were sitting on $900,000 of equity and letting it rot while we drowned in debt. We had to make a business decision. A little nap for you, a little payday for us. Everybody wins. She said the numbers. She admitted the coercion. She tied the drugging to the theft. It was perfect. It was the golden ticket. It was a federal indictment wrapped in a bow. Terrence looked uncomfortable. Stop talking about it, Court. Let us just go. The notary is waiting. Courtney looked at me one last time. She patted my cheek. Hard. It was almost a slap. Bye, Desmond. Try not to miss us too much. We will be busy enjoying your money. They walked out. Terrence did not look back. He just clutched the folder to his chest like a shield. The door closed. I sat there for a long time, rocking back and forth, keeping the rhythm just in case they were watching through the peephole. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. Then I stopped. I reached into my waistband and pulled out the pen. The little red light was still blinking. Recording. I pressed the stop button. I held the device in my hand. It weighed less than an ounce, but it was heavy. It carried the weight of my son's betrayal. It carried the weight of my freedom. And it carried the weight of their destruction. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. I saw them walking to Terrence's car. Courtney was laughing. She grabbed his arm and pointed at something, probably talking about the pool or the gym. Terrence was smiling now too. The guilt was gone, replaced by the relief of the heist. They drove away. I looked at the recorder in my hand. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not joy. It was not happiness. It was the cold, hard satisfaction of a job well done. I had them. I had them dead to rights. But I was not done. Not yet. They had taken my house. They had taken my dignity. They had tried to take my mind. A prison sentence was not enough. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to lose everything. I walked over to the bed and sat down. I waited for Brenda. Tonight the recorder would go to Elena. Tomorrow the war would move from the shadows to the courtroom. I looked at the spot where Courtney had stood. She wanted to build a gym in my office. She wanted to destroy Etta's roses. I touched the ring on my finger, my wedding band that they hadn't managed to steal yet. You were going to build nothing, Courtney, I whispered to the empty room. You were going to dig a hole, and then you were going to fall into it. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. For the first time in a week, I slept without dreaming. I slept like a baby. I slept like a man who held the thunder in his hand and was just waiting for the right moment to throw it. Friday morning arrived with a silence that felt heavier than the steel door of the isolation room. The recorder was gone. Brenda had smuggled it out in a dirty laundry cart at 4 a.m., handing it off to a courier Elena had parked behind the dumpster. Now I was naked, not literally, but strategically. I had no leverage left inside these walls. My fate was entirely in the hands of a lawyer I hadn't seen in 5 years, and a nurse who was stealing painkillers to make rent. I sat on the edge of my bed in the general ward. My roommate, the screamer, was asleep, finally sedated into oblivion. I watched the clock on the wall. 9 a.m. The courts were open. Elena would be walking up the steps of the Fulton County Superior Court right now. She would be carrying the recorder, a sworn affidavit from Brenda, and a petition for an emergency writ of habeas corpus. It was the nuclear option. It forced the state to produce the body, meaning me, before a judge immediately to determine if my detention was lawful. But there was a catch. There is always a catch. The moment the clerk stamped that file, it became public record. If Terrence or Courtney had an alert set up on my name, or if their lawyer was checking the dockets, they would know. And if they knew before the police arrived at Shady Pines, I was a dead man. They would not kill me here. That was too messy. They would transfer me. They would put me in a van and drive me to a facility in rural Alabama, where they did not ask questions and where cell service did not exist. I would become a John Doe in a memory unit, and Desmond Floyd would simply cease to exist. I watched the parking lot. Every delivery van that pulled up made my heart hammer against my ribs. Was that the transfer vehicle? Was that the cleaners? No, it was just food service. 10 a.m., 11 a.m. The sweat was trickling down my back. I forced my hands to stop shaking. I had to stay in character. I shuffled to the nurse's station. I asked for apple juice. I drooled a little. Marcus, the orderly, laughed at me and gave me a warm box of juice. I drank it and shuffled back to my room. Noon. The sun was high and hot on the asphalt outside. Still nothing. Doubt began to creep in like a cold fog. Maybe Elena couldn't get a judge. Maybe the evidence wasn't enough. Maybe Brenda burned me and threw the recorder in the trash. Then I saw it. A black sedan turned into the lot. Then another. Then a marked Atlanta police cruiser. Then two more. They did not use sirens. They moved with the silent, predatory grace of a coordinated strike team. They blocked the front entrance. They blocked the service exit. I stood up. I straightened my spine. The old man act was over. The front doors of Shady Pines are heavy glass, secured by a magnetic lock that requires a keypad code. From my room down the hall, I heard the commotion start. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the sound of authority demanding entry. Open this door immediately. Police. I walked out of my room. I did not shuffle. I marched. Other patients were looking out of their doorways, confused and frightened. The staff looked panicked. Nurses were scrambling, trying to hide charts, trying to look busy. At the end of the hallway, Dr. Vornoff appeared. He was a small man with a comb-over, and a stethoscope he wore like a piece of jewelry. He looked like a rat who smelled a trap. He was shouting at the receptionist, "Do not open it. Call Mr. Floyd. Call the son. Now." He knew. He knew the game was up, and his first instinct was to call his accomplice. I walked toward the lobby. I saw Vornoff turn. He saw me. His eyes went wide. He realized in that split second that the vegetable in room 304 was walking with the stride of a man who used to kick down doors for a living. "Get back in your room," he screamed at me, pointing a shaking finger. "Marcus, restrain him. He is having a violent episode." Marcus stepped forward, looking uncertain. He was big, but he was a bully, not a fighter. He looked at me, then he looked at the police pounding on the glass doors. "I would not do that, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, deep, and loud. It carried down the hallway. "That is obstruction of justice. That is 5 years in federal prison. Do you want to go to prison for this little man?" Marcus stopped. He backed away, his hands raised. Smart kid. Vornoff panicked. He grabbed a syringe from the crash cart. He was going to try to sedate me right there in the hallway, to present me to the police as a raving lunatic. He lunged at me. I did not move. I did not flinch. I waited until he was 2 feet away. Then I stepped to the side, caught his wrist, and twisted. It was a move I learned in the academy 40 years ago. The syringe clattered to the floor. Vornoff yelped in pain as I pinned his arm behind his back and shoved him into the wall. The front doors burst open. The magnetic locks disengaged. A wave of blue uniforms flooded the lobby. Leading them was a woman in a sharp gray suit with heels that clicked like gunshots on the linoleum. Elena Rodriguez. She looked at me pinning the doctor to the wall. She looked at the syringe on the floor. She smiled. "Nice to see you, Des," she said. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible," I said, "but I think the doctor here feels worse." "Get your hands off him," Vornoff shrieked, struggling against my grip. "This man is a danger. He is a patient. This is a violation of HIPAA." Elena walked up to him. She held up a piece of paper with a judge's seal on it. "Dr. Vornoff, I am serving you with a court order for the immediate release of Desmond Floyd." And this, she signaled to the officers behind her, is a warrant for the seizure of all medical records and surveillance footage related to his care. You are not a doctor right now, sir. You are a suspect. 2 officers stepped forward. I released Vornoff, and they cuffed him instantly. He started spouting legal nonsense about jurisdiction and patient privacy, but nobody was listening. The lobby was chaos. Nurses were crying. Patients were wandering. But in the center of the storm, I felt the first breath of clean air in a week. Elena looked at me. Her eyes were scanning for injuries. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice dropping the professional veneer for a second. "I am fine," I said. "Just get me out of here." "Not yet," she said. "We have to do this by the book." The judge ordered an immediate independent psychiatric evaluation to vacate the guardianship. "The state psychiatrist is right behind me. We do it here. We do it now. We leave no room for Terrence to argue later." A tall woman with glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor stepped forward. She was carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Floyd, I am Dr. Aris. I need to ask you some questions." I looked at Vornoff being dragged out the door. I looked at Marcus cowering in the corner. I looked at Brenda standing by the nurse's station, silently watching with a small, satisfied smile. "Ask away, doctor," I said. "I have never been more sane in my life." We went into the administrator's office. It smelled of stale cigar smoke and cheap cologne. Dr. Aris sat behind the desk. Elena stood in the corner, silent, a sentinel. I sat in the guest chair. Dr. Aris opened a file. She looked at the notes Vornoff had written. "According to this, you believe your son is stealing from you, and you have hallucinations about being an investigator." I leaned forward. I placed my hands on the desk. They were steady. "I do not believe my son is stealing from me, doctor. I know it. He sold my house on October 14th to an LLC owned by his fiancee for $250,000 under market value. He forged my signature on the deed 2 days ago while I was sitting in this facility. I have the audio recording of him admitting to drugging me with benzodiazepines. As for being an investigator, I worked for the Georgia Insurance Commission for 30 years. My badge number was 4592. You can call the commissioner. He still sends me a Christmas card." Dr. Aris blinked. She looked at Elena. Elena nodded. "Okay," Dr. Aris said, closing the file. "Let us test your cognitive function. Who is the president? What is the date? Count backwards from 100 by sevens." I answered every question. I did not just answer them, I elaborated. I gave her the date, the time, and the current interest rate of the Federal Reserve. I recited the statute numbers for elder abuse and real estate fraud in the state of Georgia. After 20 minutes, Dr. Aris put her pen down. She looked at me with a mixture of respect and horror. "Mr. Floyd," she said, "in my professional opinion, you are completely competent. The diagnosis of dementia is baseless. It appears to be a total fabrication." She signed the paper. The sound of the pen on the paper was the loudest thing in the room. It was the sound of a lock clicking open. "You are free to go," she said. I stood up. My knees popped. I felt light. I felt heavy. I felt dangerous. Elena handed me a bag. "I brought you some clothes," she said. "I figured you would not want to walk out in a gown." I took the bag. I went to the bathroom and changed. I put on the slacks, the button-down shirt, the blazer. They smelled like my closet. They smelled like cedar and home. I tied my shoes. I looked in the mirror. The face looking back was gaunt. There were dark circles under the eyes. The gray stubble was thick, but the eyes were clear. The eyes were sharp. I walked out of the bathroom. Elena was waiting. "Ready to go home?" she asked. I stopped. I thought about the empty house. I thought about the gym Courtney was building. I thought about the construction crew tearing up my garden. "No," I said. "Not yet." Elena frowned. "Des, you are free. We can take you to the house. We can kick them out." "If I go home now," I said, "I am just an old man interrupting a renovation. They will fight. They will drag it out in civil court. They will hide the money. They will blame each other and slip away." I looked at the exit sign. "Terrence thinks I am a vegetable," I said. "He thinks I am locked in a box. He is probably planning a party to celebrate his new wealth." Elena smiled. She knew where I was going. She always liked the long game. "So what is the play?" she asked. "I need a hotel room," I said. "Something close to the house, something with a view of the driveway. And I need you to keep this quiet. Seal the record. Tell the police to hold Vornoff, but keep it off the blotter for 24 hours. You want to ambush them." "I want to destroy them," I said. I want them to feel safe. I want them to be clinking glasses and laughing about how easy it was. And then I want to walk in and watch their world burn. Elena checked her phone. I can get the judge to seal the file until Monday. Vornoff won't talk. He is too busy trying to cut a deal. But Des, are you sure? You look exhausted. I am energized, I said. I walked past the nurse's station. Brenda was there pretending to work. I stopped. I leaned in close. I left something under the mattress in room 304, I whispered. It is the combination to a safe deposit box. There is $10,000 cash inside. Consider it a down payment. When this is over, you have a job. Brenda didn't look up, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Go get him, Tiger, she whispered. I walked out the front doors. The air outside was hot and humid and smelled of pine needles and exhaust. It was the sweetest thing I had ever smelled. I was out. I was free. And I was armed with the truth. I got into the back of Elena's car. She started the engine. Where to? She asked. The Ritz-Carlton, I said. I need a shower. I need a steak. And then I need to watch my son dig his own grave. As we drove away, I didn't look back at Shady Pines. That place was my tomb. But I had risen, and the resurrection was going to be terrifying. The room at the Ritz-Carlton smelled of lavender and old money, but I could not smell it. All I could smell was the dust rising from across the street. I stood at the window on the 4th floor, looking down at 4,200 Peachtree Drive, my sanctuary, my legacy. It was being murdered in front of my eyes. A yellow excavator sat in the middle of the backyard like a prehistoric beast. Its claw was tearing into the earth, ripping up the soil where Etta had planted her prize-winning tea roses 20 years ago. I watched a man in a neon vest toss a cigarette butt onto the ground where my wife used to kneel with her gardening gloves. I watched the steel teeth of the machine crunch through the wooden trellis I had built with my own hands on our 10th anniversary. They were not just renovating, they were erasing. Courtney was standing on the patio, pointing and shouting orders. She wore a hard hat that looked ridiculous on her, but she wore it like a crown. She was directing the destruction of my history to make room for her vanity. An infinity pool, a concrete hole filled with water, to wash away the memory of the people who actually built that home. I felt a pain in my chest that was sharper than any heart attack. It was the grief of watching your life being dismantled while you are still alive to see it. But as I watched the first rose bush get ripped out by the roots, the grief changed. It hardened. It cooled. It turned into a block of ice in my stomach. Tears did not come. Instead, a cold clarity washed over me. They were destroying the physical evidence of my life, but they were also creating a crime scene. Every swing of that excavator was an act of arrogance. They thought they were safe. They thought the old man was rotting in Shady Pines. They had no idea that the ghost of Desmond Floyd was watching from 400 yards away, drinking black coffee and planning their funeral. I turned away from the window. I could not watch the roses die. I had work to do. I sat down at the desk where my laptop was humming. Elena had provided the computer and a secure hotspot. She had also provided the login credentials for a forensic accounting software suite that I hadn't used since I retired. It was time to follow the money. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. I needed to know why. Why the rush? Why the poison? Why the desperate need for quick cash? Greed is a motivator, but desperation is an accelerator. Terrence was desperate. I logged into the joint account I still shared with Terrence from when he was in college. He thought I had forgotten about it. He thought it was dormant, but it was linked to his primary checking account as an overdraft protection source. That link gave me a backdoor view into his financial soul. I pulled his statements for the last 6 months. It was a bloodbath. The red ink was everywhere. I saw the crypto trades first. He bought high and sold low repeatedly. He was chasing losses, trying to be a day trader with money he did not have. But that was just stupidity. Stupidity is not a crime. Then I saw the other transfers. Recurring withdrawals of $2,000, then $5,000, then $10,000. They were wire transfers to an entity called Redline Consulting LLC. I ran the name through my old law enforcement databases. It was a shell company. No website, no office. The registered agent was a man named Silas Thorne. I knew that name. Silas Thorne was not a consultant. He was a loan shark who operated out of a strip club on Cheshire Bridge Road. He was the kind of man who charged 20% interest a week and broke kneecaps if you missed a payment. I scrolled further. The payment stopped 2 weeks ago. Then there was a deposit from a pawn shop on 10th Street for $42,000. My gold. He had sold my Krugerrands. He had taken the $50,000 worth of gold I gave him and pawned it for $42 just to make a payment to Thorne. He was underwater. He owed Thorne over $200,000, according to my estimate of the vigorish. That was why he poisoned me. That was why he couldn't wait for me to die naturally. Thorne had probably given him a deadline. My son had traded my life for his own kneecaps. I leaned back in the chair. The danger was real. If Terrence didn't pay Thorne back soon, the violence wouldn't stop at threats. And if Thorne found out the house sale was fraudulent, he might come after me too, just to settle the score. I was not just fighting my family anymore. I was stepping into the middle of a mob debt collection. But Terrence wasn't the only one with dirty hands. I closed his tab and opened a new one. It was time to look at Courtney. Courtney Miller was the registered agent for Future Bright Holdings. She bought my house for $650,000, but she didn't have $650,000. I checked her credit report. Her cards were maxed out. Her BMW was leased. She was living on fumes just like Terrence. So where did the money come from to buy the house? I pulled the closing documents from the county clerk's portal. It was a cash sale. But cash doesn't always mean physical bills. It means no mortgage contingency. I looked at the source of funds. It was a hard money loan from a private lender, a bridge loan, high interest, short term. She borrowed the $650 to buy the house from me. Then I checked the filings from yesterday. There it was, the smoking gun. A new deed of trust recorded this morning. Courtney had refinanced the property immediately after buying it. But this wasn't a bridge loan. This was a conventional cash-out refinance with a major bank. The loan amount was $700,000. I looked at the appraisal attached to the filing. The house was appraised at $920,000. Here's the crime. To get that loan, Courtney had to sign a uniform residential loan application. On that application, she had to state that she was the owner of the property and that the sale was an arm's-length transaction, meaning she had no prior relationship with the seller. She lied. She also had to state that the purchase price of $650 was the fair market value when she bought it 3 days ago. But now she was telling the bank it was worth $920 to get the cash out. That is mortgage fraud. That is wire fraud, because the funds were transferred electronically. And because she did it to pay off her fiance's mob debt, it was money laundering. She had basically stolen the equity in my house, converted it into a bank loan, and was planning to use that cash to pay off a loan shark. I did the math. She bought it for $650. She got a loan for $700. She paid off the hard money lender. She pocketed $50,000 cash plus the equity. She was going to use that $50,000 to pay Thorne the interest and use the house as a piggy bank to live the high life. But she made a fatal error. The loan documents required the signature of the seller on the original transfer to be valid. That signature was forged by Terrence, acting under a fraudulent power of attorney, while I was legally incapacitated by drugs they administered. The entire chain of title was poisoned. The bank didn't own the mortgage. Courtney didn't own the house. I still own the house, but the bank had already wired the money. $700,000 of FDIC-insured cash had just been deposited into Courtney's account. I picked up my phone. I called Elena. "Jericho," I said. "What did you find?" Elena asked. "I found a federal indictment," I said. "Courtney just closed a cash-out refi on my house. She defrauded the bank. She lied on the loan application. And Terrence is using the proceeds to pay off Silas Thorne." "Silas Thorne," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave. "The bookie." "The same," I said. "We are not just going to civil court, Elena. We are going to the FBI. This is a RICO case. Do you want me to call the feds now?" Elena asked. "No," I said, looking back out the window. The excavator had stopped. A catering van was pulling into the driveway. Men were unloading tables and chairs. They were setting up a bar on the patio amidst the ruin of my garden. "Why not?" Elena asked. "Because they are having a party," I said. "A party? It looks like a housewarming," I said. "Or maybe an engagement party." "They are celebrating, Elena. They think they pulled it off. They think the money is safe in their account. So we crash it. We don't just crash it," I said. "We nuke it. I want you to call your contact at the FBI. Tell them you have a mortgage fraud ring in progress, involving organized crime. Tell them the suspects are gathering at 4200 Peachtree Drive tonight. Tell them to bring the bank fraud division. Des, that is heavy. If the FBI raids the party, it will be chaos. I want chaos, I said. I want them to be holding the champagne glasses when the cuffs go on. I want every one of their fancy friends to see it. I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pulled out my suit. It was a charcoal gray Armani I had bought for my retirement party. I put it on. It fit perfectly. I tied my tie, a Windsor knot tight and symmetrical. I looked in the mirror. The man looking back wasn't a victim. He wasn't a patient. He was the angel of death. I checked my watch. It was 5 p.m. The party started at 6. I walked to the window one last time. The sun was setting over my broken garden. The catering staff was lighting tiki torches. It looked festive. It looked expensive. "Enjoy the view, Courtney," I whispered. "It cost you 20 years in federal prison." I grabbed my room key and walked out the door. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into the arena. I was ready. I had the evidence. I had the law. And I had a righteous anger that burned brighter than any torch. It was time to go home. The walk from the hotel to my driveway was less than 500 yards, but it felt like crossing a bridge between two different worlds. Behind me was the silence of the hotel room where I had reconstructed the crime. Ahead of me was the noise of the victory lap. I could hear the jazz music floating on the night air. It was a smooth saxophone melody that clashed violently with the screaming in my head. I adjusted my cuffs. I buttoned my jacket. I walked past the line of cars parked along the curb. Mercedes-Benz, Range Rover, Porsche. It was a parade of expensive metal owned by people who probably thought net worth was a measure of character. I reached the end of the driveway and stopped in the shadows of the old oak tree that Terrence hadn't cut down yet. The scene before me was obscene. My house was lit up like a casino. Tiki torches lined the walkway. A massive banner hung over the front door that read, "Future Bright Holdings, New Beginnings." Waiters in white coats moved through the crowd with silver trays. I saw people eating shrimp cocktails standing on the grass where I used to play catch with my son. They were drinking champagne. They were laughing. It was a celebration of theft. It was a party funded by the equity they had stripped from my bones. I spotted them near the bar set up on the patio. Courtney was wearing a white dress that shimmered under the lights. It was backless and tight, and looked like something a movie star would wear to an award show. She held a glass of champagne in one hand and was gesturing expansively with the other, probably explaining how she was going to bulldoze the garage to make room for a guest house. Terrence stood next to her. He was wearing a tuxedo. A tuxedo. He looked ridiculous. He looked like a waiter who had stolen a guest's drink, but he was laughing. He was throwing his head back and laughing at something a man in a linen suit was saying. I watched them for a full minute. I let the image burn into my retinas. I wanted to remember this. I wanted to remember exactly how happy they looked, while they thought I was rotting in a cell, covered in my own filth. I thought about the cold mashed potatoes at Shady Pines. I thought about the restraints. I thought about the needle. The contrast between their joy and my suffering was the fuel I needed. It burned away any lingering hesitation. It burned away the last shreds of fatherly love. I was not a father tonight. I was the reaper. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched under my dress shoes. A valet stepped forward to intercept me, thinking I was a guest who had lost his way. "Sir, can I help you?" he asked. I did not stop. I did not look at him. "I am the owner," I said, my voice flat and hard as granite. I kept walking. I moved through the crowd on the lawn. People turned to look at me. I was an anomaly. I was an older black man in a sea of young, trendy faces. But I walked with an authority that made them part like the Red Sea. I did not make eye contact. My eyes were locked on the couple on the patio. The jazz band was playing a cover of a Sinatra song. The conversation was a low buzz of networking and gossip. I reached the edge of the patio steps. I walked up them slowly, one by one. The music didn't stop all at once. It faltered. The saxophone player saw me first. He trailed off into a squeak. The drummer stopped a second later. The silence rippled outward from the stage. People sensed the tension. They stopped talking. They turned toward the patio. Courtney had her back to me. She didn't notice the silence at first. She was too busy basking in her triumph. And then, "We are going to import Italian marble for the pool deck," she was saying, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "It is going to be—" Terrence saw me. He was facing the crowd, his eyes locked onto mine. The glass of scotch in his hand slipped. It didn't fall. It just tilted enough to spill amber liquid down the front of his tuxedo shirt. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His face went the color of ash. He looked like he was seeing a dead man walking. Courtney noticed his expression. She turned around slowly, annoyed by the interruption. "What is wrong with you, Terry?" she started to say. Then she saw me. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she was going to faint. Her eyes went wide. The champagne glass trembled in her hand. For a second she didn't recognize me. I wasn't the drooling invalid she had left in the nursing home. I was shaved. I was clean. I was wearing a $3,000 suit, and I was looking at her with the cold calculation of a man about to pull the trigger. "Hello, Courtney," I said. My voice was calm, smooth, and loud enough to reach the back of the garden. "You forgot to send me an invitation, but that is okay. I know where you live." The silence was absolute. You could hear the tiki torches hissing. Every eye at the party was fixed on us. It was the theater of the absurd, and I was the lead actor. "Dad," Terrence whispered. His voice was a strangled squeak. How did you—" I walked over to a nearby table. I picked up a glass of champagne. I held it up to the light. It looked expensive. I toasted them. "To family," I said, my voice dripping with irony. "To the people who drug you. To the people who kidnap you. To the people who sell your house while you are sleeping. Cheers." I downed the drink in one swallow and tossed the glass over my shoulder. It shattered on the patio stones with a sound like a gunshot. Courtney snapped out of her shock. Her survival instinct kicked in. She went on the offensive. "Security!" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "Get him out of here! This man is mentally ill. He escaped from a facility. He is dangerous. Call the police." Two large men in black t-shirts started to move toward me from the edge of the lawn. They were hired muscle, probably bouncing for the party. I did not move. I did not flinch. I reached into my jacket pocket. Terrence flinched, thinking I was reaching for a weapon. I pulled out a piece of paper. It was the court order, signed by Judge Hamilton that morning. "I wouldn't do that, gentlemen," I said to the bouncers without looking at them, "unless you want to be charged with assault and battery on a senior citizen." The bouncers stopped. They looked at Courtney, then at me. They saw the confidence in my stance. They hesitated. "Get him out of here," Courtney shrieked, stamping her foot. "This is my house. He is trespassing." I laughed. It was a deep, rumbling laugh that came from the bottom of my chest. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a judge passing sentence. "Your house?" I asked. I looked around. I looked at the banner. I looked at the guests. I took a step closer to her. She backed away until she hit the railing. "This is not your house, Courtney. This is a crime scene, and you are not the hostess. You are the suspect." I turned to the crowd. I raised my hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, projecting my voice like I was testifying in open court, "I apologize for interrupting your drinks, but I think you should know that the champagne you are drinking was bought with stolen money. The food you are eating was paid for by mortgage fraud. And the woman standing right there," I pointed a finger at Courtney. It was steady as a rock. "That woman is a con artist who drugged her future father-in-law, committed him to a state asylum under false pretenses, and forged his signature to steal $700,000 from a federally insured bank." A gasp went through the crowd. People started to back away. The circle around the patio widened. "He is lying," Courtney screamed. "He is crazy. He has dementia. Do not listen to him, Terrence, tell them." She grabbed Terrence's arm, shaking him. "Tell them he is crazy, Terry." Terrence looked at me. He looked at the paper in my hand. He looked at the accusation in my eyes. He crumbled. He could not speak. He just shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "He is not crazy, Courtney," he whispered. "He never was." I smiled. "Thank you, son. At least you got one thing right." I looked past them toward the driveway. I nodded. "Now, Courtney, you wanted to call the police," I said. "You wanted the authorities. Well, I believe in giving people what they want." At that moment, the night exploded in blue and red light. Elena had timed it perfectly. 4 unmarked FBI SUVs and 3 Atlanta PD cruisers swerved into the driveway, blocking the exit. The sirens chirped once, a short, sharp sound that signaled the end of the party. Agents and windbreakers poured out of the vehicles. They had weapons drawn, but low. They moved with professional speed, surrounding the perimeter. Courtney looked at the lights. She looked at the agents. She looked at me. The arrogance vanished. The vanity evaporated. All that was left was the terrified realization that she had played the game and lost. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I fixed the problem," I said. Agent Miller, the lead FBI agent, walked up the steps. He was a man I had worked with on a racketeering case 5 years ago. He looked at Courtney. He looked at Terrence. "Courtney Miller, Terrence Floyd," he said, his voice cutting through the night air. "I have a federal warrant for your arrest on charges of bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse." Courtney dropped her drink. It splashed over her expensive shoes. She started to shake. "No," she stammered. "No, this is a mistake. I own this house. I have the deed." Agent Miller shook his head. "The deed is a forgery, ma'am. We have the forensic report. And we have the audio of you admitting to the drugging." He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. The metal glinted in the torchlight. "Please place your hands behind your back." The party guests were silent, paralyzed by the spectacle. This was not just a scandal. This was a raid. I watched as the agent spun Courtney around. She tried to pull away, but he was professional and quick. The cuffs clicked shut. I watched Terrence. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just held out his hands, his head hanging low. He accepted his fate. I walked over to him. I stood right in front of him while the agent cuffed him. "Why?" I asked softly. "Just tell me why." Terrence looked up. His eyes were red. "We were drowning, Dad. We just needed a lifeline." I looked at him. I looked at the son I had carried on my shoulders. "I was your lifeline, son," I said. "I would have given you anything if you had just asked. But you didn't ask. You took, and you tried to throw me away like garbage." I turned my back on him. "Take them away, agent." As they marched them down the steps past the stunned guests, past the tiki torches, past the banner that promised new beginnings, I felt a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. The house was a mess. My garden was ruined. My family was destroyed. But I was standing. I was standing on my own patio, in my own suit, breathing my own air. I looked at the crowd. They were staring at me with a mix of fear and awe. "The party is over," I said. "Get off my lawn." The flashing lights of the police cruisers painted the front lawn in strokes of red and blue, turning the party into a surreal nightmare. Most people would be broken by handcuffs. Most people would be weeping or begging for a lawyer. But Courtney Miller was not most people. She was a narcissist who believed her own lies so deeply that they became her reality. Even with her hands cuffed behind her back and an FBI agent reading her rights, she was still trying to close the deal. "Wait," she shouted, struggling against the grip of the agent. "You are making a mistake. A massive lawsuit waiting to happen. I have the paperwork. It is in the safe in the study. Go look at it." Agent Miller paused. He looked at me. I nodded. "Let her dig," I said. Courtney straightened her spine, trying to regain some of the dignity she had lost when she dropped her champagne. "Listen to me," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "That man is senile. He has been committed by a medical professional. His son, Terrence, has a durable power of attorney. It was signed, notarized, and filed. Everything we did was legal. We have the deed. We have the title insurance. This house belongs to Future Bright Holdings, and I am the CEO. You are arresting the wrong person." She looked at the crowd of stunned guests seeking an audience. "This is harassment," she declared. "This is a civil dispute. You have no jurisdiction here. Check the county records. The sale is recorded. It is legal." I watched her with a mixture of disgust and pity. She really believed it. She thought that because she had filed a piece of paper, the law would protect her theft. She thought the bureaucracy was a shield. She did not understand that paper trails work both ways. She was waving the very evidence that would convict her. Terrence was standing next to her, looking like a ghost. He was not shouting. He was staring at the ground. He knew. Deep down, he knew the foundation was rotten. But Courtney was still fighting. "Go get the papers," she demanded again. "Prove me wrong." Elena stepped out from the shadows of the porch. She was holding a black briefcase. She looked like an executioner in a business suit. "We do not need to go to your safe," Courtney Elena said, her voice cutting through the humid night air. "We have the papers right here." Elena opened the briefcase. She pulled out a document. It was the power of attorney Terrence had used to sign the deed. "This is the document you are relying on, correct?" Elena asked. "Yes," Courtney snapped. "Signed by Desmond Floyd. Witnessed and notarized. It gives Terrence full control over his assets due to incapacitation." I stepped forward. I walked right up to Courtney. I wanted her to see the clarity in my eyes. I wanted her to see the man she thought she had erased. "Incapacitation," I said, tasting the word. "That is the key, isn't it? The power of attorney is only valid if the principal, that is me, is competent when he signs it, or if it is a springing power that only activates upon medical proof of incapacity." Courtney sneered. "We have the proof. Dr. Vornoff signed the affidavit. You have dementia, Desmond. You do not know what day it is." Elena pulled another piece of paper from her file. It was the report from Dr. Aris, the state psychiatrist. It was stamped with the seal of the Superior Court. "Actually," Elena said, "Dr. Vornoff is currently in custody for insurance fraud and falsifying medical records, and this is a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation conducted today at noon. It states unequivocally that Desmond Floyd is fully competent. He has no dementia. He has no cognitive decline. He is as sane as you or I." The color began to drain from Courtney's face, so Elena continued, closing the trap. "If Desmond was competent, then the emergency guardianship based on Vornoff's lies is void ab initio. That is Latin, Courtney. It means it was never valid. It was a nullity from the start." "But he signed it," Courtney stammered. "He signed the power of attorney months ago." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "No, I didn't, Courtney. I never signed a power of attorney. Terrence forged it." Terrence's head snapped up. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. He opened his mouth to deny it, but I cut him off. "I saw the date on the filing." "Terrence," I said, "you dated it August 12th. You thought I would not remember. But August 12th was the day I was in Savannah, visiting Etta's grave. I have the gas receipts. I have the hotel bill. I was 300 miles away when I supposedly signed that paper in Atlanta." Courtney looked at Terrence. Her eyes were wild. "You said he signed it," she hissed. "You told me you had it covered." "I thought he wouldn't remember," Terrence whispered. The crowd gasped. It was the first crack in the dam, a public admission of forgery. "So," Elena said, her voice raising to address the agents and the bank fraud investigators, "if the power of attorney is a forgery, then Terrence had no legal authority to act on Desmond's behalf. That means his signature on the deed, transferring the house to Future Bright Holdings, is also a forgery. It is fraud." Courtney shook her head violently. "No, no. I have title insurance. The bank accepted it. The loan is funded. I have the money. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Possession implies lawful ownership," I said. "You are just a squatter in a dress." Courtney was panting now, her chest heaving. She looked around, looking for an exit, looking for a loophole. She refused to accept defeat. "It doesn't matter," she screamed. "The deal is done. The money changed hands. You can sue us. You can drag us to court for years. But right now this is my house. I have the keys. I have the code to the alarm. You cannot kick me out without an eviction notice." She was clinging to the technicalities of landlord-tenant law. She was trying to turn a felony bust into a housing dispute. She thought if she could just stay in the house, she could use the $700,000 to hire a lawyer and fight me until I died. I looked at Elena. She smiled. It was time for the final blow. It was time to reveal the secret that I had kept even from Terrence. The secret that made all their scheming, all their forgery, and all their poisoning completely irrelevant. "You are missing one thing, Courtney," I said. "Even if the power of attorney was real, even if I was crazy, even if Terrence had the right to sign my name, he still could not sell this house." "Why not?" Courtney spat. "He is your heir. He is your proxy." "Because he does not own it," I said, "and neither do I." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crickets seemed to stop chirping. Terrence looked at me confused. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Terrence asked. "It is your house. You paid the mortgage off 10 years ago." "I did," I said. "And 5 years ago, after I had a scare with my heart, I went to see an estate planner. I wanted to make sure my assets were protected. I wanted to make sure that if I ever got sick or remarried, The legacy I built with Etta would be safe. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was a copy of a trust agreement. I transferred the title of this house and all my major assets into a revocable living trust, I said. The Desmond and Etta Floyd Family Trust. I held up the paper. I am the grantor, I said, and I am the trustee. The deed to this house is in the name of the trust, not in the name of Desmond Floyd, the individual. I walked closer to Terrence. I shoved the paper into his cuffed hands. Read it, son. Terrence stared at the paper. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold it. The trust agreement states clearly that the power to sell or encumber trust assets resides solely with the trustee, I explained. It also states that in the event of my incapacity, a successor trustee is appointed. And who is the successor? Courtney whispered. Her voice was barely audible. It is not you, Terrence, I said. And it certainly isn't you, Courtney. It is the Bank of Atlanta Trust Department, I said. I set it up that way specifically to prevent family members from making emotional or desperate financial decisions. The realization hit them like a physical blow. So when Terrence signed the deed as Desmond Floyd, Elena clarified he was signing as an individual. But the individual didn't own the house. The trust did. He sold you something he didn't have the rights to. It is like me trying to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. The deed you recorded, Courtney, is worthless. It transfers nothing. It conveys zero interest. Courtney looked at the house she had renovated, the house she had mortgaged, but the loan, she whispered. The bank gave me $700,000. They did a title search. They did a search on Desmond Floyd, I said. And because the tax records hadn't been updated yet, they missed the trust transfer. Or maybe your title company was incompetent. Or maybe you bribed them. It does not matter. The bank gave you a loan secured by a property you do not own, based on a sale that never legally happened. I leaned in close. That means the $700,000 sitting in your account isn't a mortgage proceed, Courtney. It is unsecured bank funds obtained by fraud. You stole $750,000 from a federally insured institution. And since you have no collateral, the FBI calls that bank larceny. Courtney's knees gave out. The agent behind her had to grab her arm to keep her from hitting the ground. She looked at the house, then at me, then at the handcuffs on her wrists. The math finally added up. The house of cards had collapsed. Terrence looked at me. There were tears running down his face. You knew, he whispered. You knew the whole time. I didn't know you would try to kill me for it, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I set up the trust to protect you from taxes, Terrence, to make it easy for you when I died. I did it for you, and you used it to try and bury me. I stepped back. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound exhaustion. I looked at the FBI agent. They are all yours, I said. The agent nodded. He signaled his team. They began to march Courtney and Terrence toward the waiting SUVs. Courtney started screaming then. Not words, just a raw sound of denial and rage. She kicked at the gravel. She twisted in the agent's grip. She looked back at the house one last time. It was mine, she shrieked. It was mine. It was never yours, I said softly. It never belonged to greed. It belonged to love, and you don't know the first thing about that. I watched them go. I watched my son being put into the back of a federal vehicle. I watched the door slam shut. The finality of the sound echoed in the night. The guests began to scatter, rushing to their cars, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. The waiters were packing up the bar, looking nervous. The music had long since died. I stood alone in the middle of the driveway. Elena walked up beside me. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, a silent witness to the wreckage. We did it, she said finally. I looked at the hole in the garden where the roses used to be. We won the war, Elena, I said, but look at the cost. We are not done yet, she reminded me. We have to secure the money before they freeze the accounts, and we have to deal with the loan shark. I nodded. She was right. The emotional part was over. Now came the cleanup. I took a deep breath of the night air. It smelled of jasmine and impending rain. Let us go inside, I said. I want to see what they did to my office, and then I want to call the bank. I walked up the steps to my front door. I didn't need a key. I kicked the door open. It swung wide, revealing the foyer. It was empty. They had sold my furniture, but the walls were still standing. The foundation was solid. I walked in. I was home. And I had a lot of work to do. The silence on the lawn was broken by the sound of a car door closing. It was a heavy thud that sounded like a gavel hitting a block. Elena turned toward the driveway and beckoned to a man standing near the police barricade. He was dressed in a navy blue suit that looked out of place among the tactical gear of the FBI agents. He carried a tablet and had the weary expression of a man who spent his life looking at spreadsheets that did not add up. Courtney was still staring at the trust document in Terrence's hands, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. She was trying to find a way out, trying to spin the narrative, but the physics of the law were crushing her. "I would like to introduce you to Mr. Henderson," Elena said, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "He is the Vice President of Risk Management for First National Bank of Atlanta, the bank that just wired you $700,000 this morning." Courtney spun around. Her heels dug into the gravel. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice rising an octave, attempting to summon her customer service charm. "Thank God you are here. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. These people are claiming the title is invalid, but we have the approval. The funds are already in my account. You can verify it." Henderson walked up the steps. He did not look at Courtney. He looked at the house. He looked at the FBI agents. Then he looked at his tablet. "Ms. Miller," he said in a voice devoid of emotion, "we received a fraud alert from the Federal Reserve 2 hours ago regarding the wire transfer to Future Bright Holdings. We also received a sworn affidavit from Mr. Desmond Floyd, stating that he never signed the sale deed." Courtney pointed a shaking finger at me. "He is lying," she shrieked. "He is trying to sabotage the deal. The money is mine. It is in my account. That makes it a completed transaction." "It makes it a federal crime," Henderson corrected. "You signed a loan application stating you held clear title to this property. You used that title as collateral to secure $700,000 of depositors' money. Since you do not own the property, you have no collateral. That means you obtained those funds under false pretenses." Courtney wiped sweat from her forehead. Her makeup was starting to streak. "So I will pay it back," she snapped. "If the deal is dead, I will just return the money. No harm, no foul, right? Just reverse the wire." She was trying to simplify it. She was trying to make it sound like a clerical error. She thought if she gave the money back, the handcuffs would disappear. Henderson looked at her over the rim of his glasses. "It is not that simple, Ms. Miller. The bank has already initiated a clawback procedure. However, we need to account for the funds immediately to mitigate our exposure. Can you show me the current balance of the receiving account?" Courtney let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "Of course, it is all there. I haven't touched a dime. I was at a party, for God's sake." She reached for her purse, which was sitting on a patio table next to the shattered champagne glass. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it once before she could unlock it. She opened her banking app. "See," she said, thrusting the phone toward Henderson. 700,000. Her voice died. It just stopped like someone had cut the power cord. She stared at the screen. She swiped down to refresh. She swiped again. Her face went from pale to a sickly gray. "Where is it?" she whispered. I stepped closer. I wanted to see this. I wanted to see the moment the bottom fell out of her world. "Where is what, Courtney?" I asked. "The money!" she screamed. She turned on Terrence, who was still standing there, paralyzed by the trust document. "Where is the money, Terrence? The account balance is 0. It says 0. Terrence looked up. He looked at the phone. He looked at the FBI agents surrounding the patio. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the terror of a man who knows he is already dead. I moved it," Terrence stammered. "You what?" Courtney lunged at him, grabbing the lapels of his tuxedo. "You moved it. Where? Why?" "I had to," Terrence cried, pushing her away. "Silas called. He said if he didn't have the payment by 5 p.m. today, he was going to send guys to the party. He said he was going to break my legs in front of everyone." Henderson stepped forward, his face hard. "Mr. Floyd, are you saying you wired $700,000 out of the account immediately after it was deposited?" "I wired $200,000 to Redline Consulting," Terrence admitted, his voice shaking. "That was the debt, and I sent the rest to an offshore wallet, just to keep it safe, just until the heat died down." "Safe?" Courtney screamed. "You idiot! You sent the money to a loan shark in a crypto wallet. You laundered it." "I did it for us," Terrence yelled back, his facade cracking completely. "We needed to be clean, Court. You said once we got the house money we would be free." Elena stepped in. Her voice was the only calm thing in the hurricane. "So let us be clear. You obtained a loan through fraud using a house you didn't own, and within hours you wire transferred the proceeds to a known criminal enterprise and an untraceable offshore account." Henderson tapped his tablet. "That confirms it. The funds are gone. The bank has suffered a total loss." Courtney looked at Henderson, then at the FBI agents. She realized what this meant. It wasn't just attempted fraud anymore. It was successful theft. The money was gone, and she was the one who signed the loan application. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't happening. Terrence, bring it back. Reverse the transfer." "I can't," Terrence sobbed. "It is gone, Court. Silas doesn't do refunds." I watched them turn on each other. It was inevitable. Rats always eat each other when the ship goes down. But there was one more layer to this. One more nail in the coffin. "Agent Miller," I said, speaking to the FBI lead, "you might want to check the recipient of that offshore transfer." Miller looked at me. "You know where it went." "I did a little forensic accounting this afternoon," I said. "I recognize the routing number Terrence used for his crypto wallet. It is the same one he used 6 months ago when he lost his savings. He didn't just hide the money, he gambled it. He tried to double up on a coin toss before the party started." Terrence looked at me with horror. "How did you know?" "Because I know you, son," I said. "You never stopped digging. You thought you could pay off the shark and turn the rest into millions before anyone noticed. But the market crashed at 4:30 this afternoon. You didn't just move the money, Terrence. You lost it." Terrence fell to his knees. He covered his face with his hands. A wail of pure despair rose from his throat. It was the sound of a man who realized he had sold his father for nothing. Courtney stared at him. The realization hit her. The money was not just missing, it was incinerated. She was $700,000 in debt to a bank for a house she didn't own, and she had nothing to show for it but a party dress and a pair of handcuffs. She turned to run. It was a pure animal instinct. Panic overrode logic. She bolted toward the side gate, her heels clicking on the stone. She didn't get 3 steps. Agent Miller moved with surprising speed. He stepped into her path and grabbed her arm. "Courtney Miller," he said, spinning her around. "You are under arrest." "No," she screamed, clawing at his hand. "Let me go. I am a victim. He stole it. It was Terrence. Arrest him, not me." Agent Miller slammed her against the pillar of the patio. "Stop fighting," he ordered. He pulled her arms behind her back. The sound of the ratcheting handcuffs cut through her screams. "You are charged with bank fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy," he recited. Courtney thrashed. Her hair fell across her face. Her dress tore at the shoulder. She looked wild, feral. "I am the CEO," she yelled at the guests, who were watching in horrified silence. "I am a businesswoman. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am?" I walked over to her. I stood right in front of her as the agent tightened the cuffs. "We know exactly who you are, Courtney," I said. "You are a thief who thought she was smarter than the law. You are a woman who tried to bury an old man because you wanted a swimming pool." She spat at me. It landed on my lapel. I didn't wipe it off. I just looked at her with cold indifference. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "You old bastard. You should have just died, maybe," I said. "But I didn't, and that is your problem." Agent Miller yanked her up. "Let us go." They dragged her down the steps. She was kicking and screaming, cursing me, cursing Terrence, cursing the world. Her heels dragged in the gravel, leaving 2 long lines in the driveway of the house she would never own. I watched her go. The real estate queen was being hauled away like a common criminal. Her empire was built on sand, and the tide had just come in. I turned to Terrence. He was still on his knees, weeping. An agent was standing over him, waiting for the order. I looked at my son, the boy I had taught to fish, the boy I had sat up with when he had a fever, the boy I had adopted and loved as my own. He looked up at me. His eyes were pleading. "Dad," he whispered, "please, I am sorry." I looked at him. I looked at the ruin of my garden. I looked at the trust document lying in the dirt where he had dropped it. I felt a tear run down my cheek. It was hot and salty. It was the last tear I would ever shed for him. "Agent," I said, my voice cracking, "take him." The agent pulled Terrence to his feet. He didn't fight. He slumped like a puppet with cut strings. He held out his hands for the cuffs. As the metal clicked shut, he looked at me one last time. "I just wanted you to be proud of me," he said. I looked at him. I looked at the wreckage of my life. "I was proud of you, son," I said softly, "until you decided I was worth less than a house." They walked him away. He didn't look back. I stood alone on the patio. The party guests were gone. The police lights were fading into the distance. The silence returned to Peachtree Drive. It was over. The fraud was exposed. The money was gone. The criminals were in custody. But as I looked at the empty yard, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a survivor of a shipwreck standing on the shore, watching the debris wash away. Elena walked up to me. She handed me a handkerchief. I wiped the spit from my jacket. "Are you okay, Des?" she asked. "I will be," I said. I looked at the house. It was still standing. It was scarred. It was violated. But it was still mine. "I have a lot of work to do," I said. Elena nodded. "We will handle the bank," she said. "We will handle the civil suits. You just rest." "I don't need rest," I said. "I need a shovel." I walked off the patio and into the garden. I found a shovel the construction crew had left behind. I walked to the spot where Etta's favorite rosebush used to be. It was just a hole now, a muddy scar in the earth. I started to fill it in, one shovel at a time. I was not just filling a hole. I was burying the past. I was burying the betrayal. I was Desmond Floyd. I was 69 years old, and I was starting over. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers strobed across the ruined garden, creating a chaotic rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. Courtney was gone, her screams fading into the back of a federal vehicle, but the silence she left behind was even heavier. In the center of the patio, kneeling in the dirt and debris of his own making, was Terrence, my son, the boy I had taught to tie his shoes, the teenager I had taught to drive, the man who had tried to erase my existence for a payout. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears and snot, his expensive tuxedo ruined by the gravel. He crawled forward on his knees, reaching out to grab the hem of my trousers. "Dad," he sobbed, his voice cracking like a broken bell. "Dad, please do not let them take me. I am your son. I am your boy." I looked down at him. I stood perfectly still, my hands in my pockets, not offering him a hand, not offering him comfort. The FBI agents stood back, giving us a moment, a final perimeter of privacy in the middle of the public execution of his reputation. "It was Courtney," he stammered, the words spilling out in a desperate torrent. "She made me do it, Dad. She said it was the only way. She said you would not understand about the debt. She said we just needed to borrow the equity and we would pay it back. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear on Mom's grave I never wanted to hurt you." He was using Etta. He was using his dead mother as a shield to protect himself from the consequences of his greed. It was a low blow, a tactic of emotional terrorism that he knew would usually work. For 30 years, whenever he got in trouble, he would invoke Etta's name, and I would soften. I would write the check. I would make the call. I would fix it. "I was scared, Dad," he cried, clutching my leg now, burying his face against my shoe. "Silas Thorne said he would kill me. He sent pictures of you, Dad. He said if I did not pay, he would come for you too. I did it to protect you. Don't you see? I had to get the money to save us both." He looked up at me, his eyes wide and pleading, trying to sell me the narrative of the tragic hero forced into crime to save his family. It was a good story. It was the kind of story that might work on a jury. It was the kind of story that would definitely work on a father who wanted to believe his son was not a monster. But I was not just a father anymore. I was an investigator, and I knew a lie when I heard one. "Protect me," I asked, my voice quiet and cold. "You protected me by poisoning my wine. You protected me by tying me to a bed in a state facility where the staff steals medication and the food smells like rot. You protected me by selling my home, the home your mother loved, to a shell company so you could gamble the proceeds on cryptocurrency." Terrence flinched, as if I had struck him. I didn't gamble at all," he lied. "I paid Silas. The rest was just an investment, to get us back on our feet." He was still lying, even on his knees facing prison. He was still trying to hustle me. "You are not sorry, Terrence," I said. "You were just sorry you got caught." "Please, Dad," he wailed, his voice rising to a shriek that echoed off the walls of the house. "Do not let them take me to prison. I will die in there. I am not like you. I am not tough. They will kill me. You have to help me. You have the money now. You have the house. You can hire a lawyer. You can fix this. You always fix this. He reached up, trying to grab my hand, trying to force a physical connection that would trigger my paternal instinct. His fingers brushed my skin and I felt a jolt of electricity. Not love, not warmth, revulsion. I looked at his hand, the same hand that had forged my signature, the same hand that had poured the poison, and I felt something inside me die. It was a quiet death, the final extinguishing of the flame that had burned for 32 years, the hope that he would turn out right, the belief that deep down he was a good person. It was gone. Ash. I stepped back, breaking his contact. I looked at the dark sky. I looked at the ruined garden. I looked at the FBI agents waiting patiently in the shadows. For a second, just a fraction of a second, my mind flashed back. I saw Terrence at 5 years old, running into my arms after his first day of kindergarten. I saw him at 10, holding up a fish he caught, his smile missing a tooth. I saw him at 18, graduating high school, looking so proud in his cap and gown. Those memories were sharp. They were real. They were the foundation of my life, and for a moment, the urge to save him was overwhelming. It was a biological imperative. Protect the offspring. Sacrifice yourself for the child. I could stop this. I could tell the agents I was mistaken. I could refuse to press charges. I could hire the best defense team in Atlanta. I could spend my retirement fighting to keep him out of jail. I could save him. But then another memory overlaid the sweet ones, a darker, sharper image. I saw Terrence sitting in my hospital room at Shady Pines. I saw the boredom in his eyes. I heard him call me Uncle Marcus, mocking my feigned dementia. I saw him sign the deed with a steady hand, while I sat there drooling in a wheelchair. I saw him laughing with Courtney as they walked away, leaving me to rot. He had watched me die. In his mind, I was already dead. He had mourned me, buried me, and spent my money before my heart had even stopped beating. He did not see a father. He saw an ATM. He saw an obstacle. And if I saved him now, if I pulled him out of this fire, I would not be saving my son. I would be enabling a predator. I would be teaching him that there are no consequences for treachery. I would be telling him that my life, my dignity, and my pain were less important than his comfort. I looked at the house, my sanctuary. He had violated it. He had brought evil into the one place that was supposed to be safe. I looked at Elena. She was watching me closely. She knew this was the hardest part. She knew that sending a stranger to prison is business, but sending your own blood is a tragedy. She did not speak. She let me find my own way to the edge. I looked back down at Terrence. He was still crying, but his eyes were darting around, looking for an angle, looking for a weakness. He was calculating. Even now. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and justice. "Stand up, Terrence," I said. He stopped crying. He looked at me hopeful. You will help me." "Stand up," I repeated, my voice harder. "Have some dignity for once in your life." He scrambled to his feet, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He looked at the agents, then back at me, a tentative smile forming on his lips. "I knew you would not do it, Dad. I knew you loved me. We can fix this. I will go to rehab. I will pay you back. I promise." I looked him in the eye. I wanted him to see me, really see me. Not the checkbook, not the safety net, the man. "I do love you, Terrence," I said. "I loved you from the moment I held you in the delivery room. I loved you through the broken windows and the failed classes and the debts. I loved you more than I love myself sometimes." His smile widened. "See, Dad? I know. We are family. But family does not kill family," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the night like a knife. His smile faltered. "What?" "You killed me, Terrence," I said. "The night you poured that powder into my wine, you killed your father. You watched me fall. You watched me stop breathing. And you did nothing. You didn't call for help. You robbed my pockets." I stepped closer until I was inches from his face. "The man standing in front of you is not your father," I said. "I am the witness to your crime. I am the victim of your greed. And I am the man who is going to make sure you never hurt anyone else, ever again." Terrence went pale. "Dad, no. Do not call me that," I said. "My son died that night too. You were just the man who stole his face." I turned to Agent Miller, who had stepped onto the patio. "He is all yours, Agent," I said. "Get him out of my sight." Agent Miller moved instantly. He spun Terrence around and slammed him against the patio column. Terrence screamed. It was a high, thin sound of pure terror. "Dad! Dad, help me! Please don't let them take me." The handcuffs clicked. It was a mechanical, final sound. I turned my back. I walked to the edge of the patio and looked out into the darkness of the yard. I heard the scuffle. I heard Terrence begging, pleading, bargaining. I heard them dragging him down the steps. "Dad, I am sorry. I am sorry, Dad." His voice faded as they dragged him toward the driveway. I did not turn around. I did not watch him go. I could not. If I looked, I might break, and I could not break. Not now. I listened until the car door slammed. I listened until the engine started. I listened until the sirens faded into the distance, merging with the city noise. Silence returned to the backyard. A heavy, suffocating silence. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. I felt hollow. It felt like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me human, leaving only a shell of bone and anger. I had won. I had saved the house. I had exposed the fraud. I had punished the guilty. But I had lost my son. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Elena. She didn't say anything. She didn't offer platitudes. She just squeezed my shoulder, a solid anchor in the storm. "He made his choice, Des," she said softly. "You just let him live with it." I nodded. My throat was tight. "I know," I whispered. "I know." I looked at the spot where Terrence had knelt. The gravel was disturbed. A few tears had darkened the stone. "It is done," I said. "It is finally done." I took a handkerchief from my pocket and wiped my eyes. I was not crying for Terrence. I was crying for the years I had wasted thinking I could save him from himself. I turned back to the house. The lights were still on, blazing in every window. It looked like a lighthouse in a dark ocean. "Let us finish this, Elena," I said, my voice steady again. "I want Vornoff arrested tonight. I want the nursing home closed down, and then I want to plant some roses." We walked into the house together, leaving the ghosts behind us in the dark. The federal vehicles carrying Terrence and Courtney had barely cleared the driveway before Elena was on the phone again. The raid on my home was just the opening salvo. The real war was still raging at Shady Pines, and I was not going to sleep until every rat in that nest was caged. We drove to the facility in silence. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold ache in my joints. I felt every one of my 69 years. But when we pulled into the cracked parking lot of Shady Pines, the sight of the flashing lights gave me a second wind. It was chaos. Beautiful, righteous chaos. The state medical board investigators were there, along with more FBI agents. They were hauling boxes of files out of the administrative office. I saw Dr. Vornoff sitting on the curb in handcuffs. He looked small. He looked pathetic. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he was sweating through his shirt. He was not shouting anymore. He was staring at the ground, realizing that his medical license was gone, and his freedom was next. Elena parked the car, and we got out. Vornoff looked up. He saw me. His eyes widened. "Mr. Floyd," he stammered. "Please, I was just doing my job. I was following protocol." I walked up to him. I looked down at the man who had signed a paper declaring me insane without even looking me in the eye. "Your job was to heal," I said. "Your protocol was greed. You took money to lock away people who became inconvenient. You are not a doctor. You are a jailer." Agent Miller walked over. "We found the ledger," he said. "Vornoff kept a separate set of books for the kickbacks he received from families for expedited committals. And we found your chart, Des. It is a work of fiction. He is going away for a long time," I said. Miller nodded. "And we are shutting this place down. The state is already arranging transfers for the legitimate patients to reputable facilities. By tomorrow morning, Shady Pines will be a memory." I looked at the building. I thought about the isolation room. I thought about the smell of bleach and despair. I thought about the man in my room who screamed at spiders because no one cared enough to help him. "Burn it down," I said, figuratively speaking. I turned away from Vornoff. He wasn't worth my anger anymore. He was just a symptom of the disease. I walked into the lobby. It was crowded with staff being questioned. I saw Marcus, the orderly who had laughed at me. He was trying to blend into the wall. When he saw me, he flinched. I walked past him. I was looking for someone else. I found her near the nurse's station. Brenda was sitting on a stool, watching the mayhem with a calm expression. She wasn't cuffed. She wasn't being questioned. She was just waiting. When she saw me, she stood up. She smoothed her scrubs. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would," I said. She looked at Elena, who was standing behind me. "Is that the shark?" "That is the shark," I said, "and she has some paperwork for you." Elena stepped forward and handed Brenda a thick envelope. Inside is an immunity agreement signed by the district attorney. Your testimony regarding the narcotics theft and the administrative fraud in exchange for a clean record. You walk away, Brenda. No jail time, no record. Brenda took the envelope. Her hands were shaking. "Why?" she asked. "I stole drugs. I helped keep you in that room. You also gave me a phone," I said. "You got the message out. You saved my life." I looked around the lobby. "But your nursing days are over. The board will revoke your license. You cannot work in medicine again." Brenda shrugged. "I hated it anyway. The smell, the sadness. It wears you down." "Good," I said, "because I have a different job in mind." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys, not to my house, but to a new life. "I am starting a foundation," I said. "It is called The Shield. We are going to provide legal defense and investigation services for seniors who are being exploited by their families. I need an office manager, someone who knows the system, someone who can spot a fake chart from a mile away, someone who isn't afraid of a fight." Brenda looked at the keys. She looked at me. "You want me to work for you. I want you to help me hunt them down," I said. "People like Vornoff, people like my son. There are thousands of them, Brenda. And there are thousands of old folks locked in rooms just like I was, who don't have a voice. I want to be their voice, and I need you to be my eyes. The salary is double what you made here," I added, "plus benefits, and dental." Brenda laughed. It was a genuine laugh, loud and warm. "Dental," she said. "You old charmer." She took the keys. "When do I start?" "Monday," I said. 9 a.m. "Wear something nice. No scrubs." She nodded. She looked at the chaotic lobby one last time. Then she walked out the front door into the night. She walked with her head high. She wasn't a thief anymore. She was a soldier in a new war. I walked back to the car. Elena was waiting. "You are a softy, Des," she said, smiling. "She helped me," I said. "Loyalty is a currency, Elena. You have to spend it to earn it." We drove back to Peachtree Drive. The police were gone. The FBI was gone. The house was dark and silent. The banner was still hanging over the door, flapping in the breeze. Future, Bright Holdings. It looked like a bad joke now. I got out of the car. I walked up the driveway. I stood on the porch and looked out over the yard. It was a mess. The grass was trampled. There were tire tracks everywhere. The patio was stained with spilled drinks, and in the back, the gaping hole of the unfinished pool looked like an open wound in the earth. I felt a wave of exhaustion hit me. It was over. The adrenaline was gone. Now there was just the reality of the aftermath. My son was in jail. My home was a construction site. My life was turned upside down. But I was free. I walked around to the back. I stood by the edge of the pit. I looked at the piles of dirt where the roses used to be. Courtney wanted to erase Etta. She wanted to erase the past. But she forgot that roots go deep. I saw something in the moonlight, a flash of green in the mound of upturned soil. I knelt down. I dug with my hands. It was a root ball, a piece of the old tea rose bush. It was battered. It was torn. But there was a tiny shoot of green pushing through the mud. It was still alive. I smiled. Tears pricked my eyes, but they were good tears. I picked up the root ball. I cradled it in my hands like a baby. "We are going to be okay," I whispered to the plant. "We are going to rebuild." I stood up. I looked at the house. It needed work. It needed paint. It needed new furniture. But it was mine. I walked to the shed. I found a pot and some potting soil that hadn't been thrown away. I planted the root ball. I watered it with the hose. I set it on the patio in a patch of moonlight. "Start small," I said. I turned to Elena, who was watching me from the doorway. "Call the contractor tomorrow," I said. "Tell him to fill in the hole. Tell him I want topsoil, the best he can get. We are planting a garden." "A rose garden," Elena asked. "A victory garden," I said. I walked into the kitchen. I turned on the lights. The house felt empty, but it didn't feel dead. It felt like a blank page. "I am Desmond Floyd," I said to the empty room. "I am 69 years old, and I am just getting started." I poured 2 glasses of water. I handed one to Elena. "To the future," I said. She clinked her glass against mine. "To the future, Des. And to the bad guys. May they never see us coming." I drank the water. It tasted clean. It tasted like freedom. I was home. 6 months have passed since the night the blue lights flashed in my driveway. The seasons have changed. The brutal humidity of the Atlanta summer has given way to the crisp, golden light of autumn. I am sitting on my back porch, wrapped in a warm cardigan, watching the leaves drift down into the yard. The excavator is gone. The gaping hole where Courtney tried to build her infinity pool has been filled in with rich, dark soil. In its place stands a new rose garden, even more magnificent than the one Etta planted 30 years ago. I spent weeks selecting the bushes. I chose hardy varieties, ones that can survive a harsh winter and come back stronger in the spring. Just like me. My morning routine has changed. I still wake up at 6 a.m., but I no longer reach for my phone to check the news. Instead, I check my security system. I have installed state-of-the-art cameras on every corner of the property. I have motion sensors on the windows and a biometric lock on my office door. Some people might call it paranoia. I call it experience. I learned the hard way that the most dangerous predators are the ones who have a key to your front door. I do not live in fear, but I live with my eyes open. I trust, but I verify. The house is quiet now, but it is not empty. It is filled with the hum of activity. My dining room table is covered in files. My coffee pot is always full. Brenda is usually here by 8 a.m. sharp. She runs the place with the same iron fist she used to run the night shift at Shady Pines, but now she smiles. She wears business suits instead of scrubs. She drives a decent car. She has her dignity back, and so do I. I drink tea now, Earl Grey. I haven't touched a drop of wine since my birthday. The memory of that bitter metallic taste is still too fresh. It is a small price to pay for clarity. I need my mind sharp. I need my hands steady. Because the work I do now requires the focus of a surgeon and the instincts of a hunter. The legal battle is over. The dust has settled, and the silence that followed the storm is the sweetest sound I have ever heard. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks ago. I went. I sat in the front row right behind the prosecutor. I wore my best suit. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to see the man they tried to erase. Terrence and Courtney sat at the defense table. They looked like strangers. The glamour was gone. Courtney's hair was dull and unwashed. Her roots were showing. She wore a prison jumpsuit that hung off her frame. She didn't look like a CEO anymore. She looked like what she was, a desperate grifter who ran out of road. Terrence looked worse. He had aged 10 years and 6 months. His shoulders were slumped. He wouldn't look at the judge. He wouldn't look at the jury. And he definitely wouldn't look at me. He spent the entire hearing staring at his hands, the hands that had forged my signature and poured my poison. The judge was a woman named Justice Holloway. She didn't have much patience for tears, and Courtney cried a lot that day. She tried to give a speech about being misled, about just wanting a better life. Justice Holloway cut her off with a bang of the gavel that sounded like a gunshot. "Courtney Miller, you are sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse," the judge said. "You preyed on a vulnerable man. You corrupted his son. You used the legal system as a weapon. You will pay restitution in the amount of $700,000. Courtney screamed when the bailiffs took her. She didn't scream for mercy. She screamed that it wasn't fair. She screamed that she was the victim. She never learned. She never would. Then it was Terrence's turn. He stood up. He mumbled something about being sorry. He said he was weak. He said he was scared. The judge looked at him over her glasses. "Being weak is not a crime, Mr. Floyd," she said. "But betraying your father is a moral failing that this court cannot forgive. You drugged your own flesh and blood. You sold his home. You left him to rot. That is not weakness. That is malice. Terrence Floyd, you are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. 15 years. He would be almost 50 when he got out. I would likely be dead." This was it, the end of the line. When they led him away, he stopped near the gallery. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "Bye, Dad," he whispered. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just nodded once. It was a nod of acknowledgement, a nod that said I heard you, a nod that said goodbye. I walked out of that courthouse and I didn't look back. I bought a hot dog from a street vendor. I sat on a bench in Centennial Park and ate it in the sunshine. It was the best hot dog I ever tasted. It tasted like justice. Dr. Vornoff took a plea deal. He gave up the names of 3 other corrupt doctors and a nursing home administrator in exchange for 5 years. Shady Pines was shut down by the state. The building was condemned. I drove past it the other day. The windows were boarded up. The grass was overgrown. It looked like a tomb, and in a way it was. It was the tomb of the man I used to be, the trusting father, the naive old man. He died in room 304, and I don't miss him. Now I have a new purpose. It started with a single phone call from a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She saw me on the news. Her daughter had power of attorney and was selling her farm while she was in rehab for a hip surgery. Mrs. Higgins was scared. She didn't know who to trust. I took the case. I drove out to her farm. I looked at the paperwork. I found the flaws. I called Elena. We stopped the sale in 48 hours. That was the beginning of the Shield. It is not just a clever name. It is a promise. We are a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting seniors from financial exploitation. We operate out of my living room for now, but we are looking for office space. Elena handles the legal filings. Brenda handles the intake and the investigations, and I handle the strategy. I sit with the clients. I drink tea with them. I listen to their stories. They are all the same story, really. A child who feels entitled, a caregiver who sees an opportunity, a system that looks the other way. I tell them my story. I show them the scars. I tell them that it is okay to be angry. I tell them that love does not mean being a doormat. We have saved 6 houses in the last 2 months. We have recovered over $2 million in stolen assets. We have put 3 more abusive guardians behind bars. I am busier now than I ever was when I was working for the state. My phone rings constantly. I have meetings with district attorneys and social workers. I give speeches at community centers. I tell them to check their paperwork. I tell them to trust, but verify. I tell them that their legacy belongs to them, not to their children. Yesterday I was working on a file for a retired teacher whose nephew was draining her savings account. I looked up and saw Brenda standing in the doorway, holding a stack of mail. "You got another letter from Terrence," she said, holding up a white envelope with a prison stamp. I looked at it. It was the 5th one this month. "Put it in the shredder," I said. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Maybe he wants to apologize." "I am sure," I said. "I don't need his apology, Brenda, and I don't need his excuses. I have moved on." She nodded and walked to the shredder. The sound of the paper being torn into confetti was soothing. I looked out the window at my rose garden. A cardinal landed on the trellis, a flash of bright red against the green. Etta used to say that cardinals were visitors from heaven. I smiled. "I am doing okay, Etta," I whispered. "I am holding the line. I am Desmond Floyd. I am 70 years old. I have a bad knee and a scar on my soul that will never fully heal. But I am alive, I am useful, and I am dangerous to anyone who thinks they can prey on the weak. People say that blood is thicker than water. They say that family is everything. But sometimes family is the poison, and you have to be your own antidote. Sometimes you have to cut off the limb to save the body." I stood up and put on my jacket. I had a meeting with a bank manager who was freezing the accounts of a 90-year-old veteran. I had a fight to pick. I walked out the front door of my house, paid for with hard work, defended with fire, kept with blood. I locked the door behind me. I checked it twice. Then I walked down the steps, ready for whatever came next. I am Desmond Floyd, and I am still standing. My journey taught me that blood isn't always thicker than water. Sometimes it is just the poison that kills you slowly. For years, I measured my worth by what I could provide for my son, only to realize my true value lay in my refusal to be erased. We often fear starting over late in life, thinking our best days are behind us. But I learned that a painful ending is often just the necessary demolition for a stronger foundation. Trust is precious. Verify it, protect it, and never let anyone, not even family, make you feel like a burden in your own life. If you believe that dignity has no expiration date, and that justice is always worth fighting for, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven your son, or would you have pressed charges just like I did?